Ladies and gentlemen, good morning. Before we get into the episode, you know the deal. Let's talk briefly about the brands that help make this podcast possible. Today's episode is brought to you by Athletic Greens. AG1 by Athletic Greens, the category-leading superfood product, brings comprehensive and convenient daily nutrition to everybody. Keeping up with the research, knowing what to do, and taking a bunch of pills or capsules is hard on the stomach and it's hard to keep up with. To help each of us be at our best, they simplify the path to better nutrition by giving the one thing with all the best things. One tasty scoop of AG1 contains 75 vitamins, minerals, and whole food sourced ingredients, including a multivitamin, multi-mineral, probiotic, green superfood blend, and more in one convenient daily serving. This special blend of high-quality, bioavailable ingredients in a scoop of AG1 work together to fill the nutritional gaps in your diet. Think of this as nutritional insurance. It allows you to support energy and focus, aid with gut health and digestion, and support a healthy immune system, effectively replacing multiple products or pills with one healthy and delicious drink. As research changes, so does the formula for AG1. While most nutritional products that come to market never evolve, Athletic Greens, they're on the 53rd iteration or improvement over the last decade and counting. And to make it easy, Athletic Greens is going to give you an immune support free 1-year supply of vitamin D and 5 free travel packs with your first purchase if you visit athleticgreens.com/clearedhot today. Again, simply visit athleticgreens.com/clearedhot to take control of your health and give AG1 a try. This episode is also brought to you by Babbel. If you've ever traveled and you know that traveling to a destination where you don't know the language can be very challenging to accomplish even the simplest of tasks. Thankfully, there's Babbel, the #1 selling language learning app. Through Babbel's bite-sized lessons, you'll learn new language skills that you can actually use in the real world. From greetings, menus, and directions to gaining a deeper understanding of the culture, Babbel is definitely a travel essential. If you're worried about time, don't be. Babbel's 15-minute lessons make it the perfect way to learn a new language on the go. Other language learning apps, they use AI for their lessons plan, but Babbel lessons were created by over 100 language experts. Their teaching method has been scientifically proven to be effective, and with Babbel, you can choose from 14 different languages, including Spanish, French, Italian, and German. Plus, Babbel's speech recognition technology helps you improve your pronunciation and accent. There are so many ways to learn with Babbel. In addition to lessons, you can access podcasts, games, videos, stories, and even live classes. Start your new language learning journey today with Babbel. Right now, when you purchase a 3-month Babbel subscription, you'll get an additional 3 months for free. That is 6 total months for the price of 3. Just go to Babbel.com and use the code ClearedHot. That is BABBEL.com, promo code ClearedHot. And the way I'm looking at it is all uppercase, one word. Babbel, language for life. This episode is also brought to you by 10,000. Now, if you're interested in getting a hold of the highest quality, best fitting, and most comfortable pair of training shorts that I have ever worn, well, you're in the right spot. Specifically, I'm talking about their 7-inch tactical short, which is the ultimate combination of durability, mobility, and versatility. I don't care if you're rucking or Olympic lifting or doing an obstacle course or maybe trying to do all 3 of those things at the same time. It doesn't matter. These shorts have you covered. You don't have to worry about a sandbag destroying your waistband or having your phone pop out of a hip pocket, and they seamlessly transition from land to water. They were developed, the 7-inch tactical short, and tested with over 50 special ops members who put it to the test by rucking, swimming, lifting, and just about everything else you can do to beat up a pair of workout shorts. They're chock full of features to stand up to your toughest sessions. They were created to withstand the demanding and ever-changing requirements of military fitness, ultralight ripstop fabric, tough as nails waistband, permanent anti-odor treatment, no bounce pockets, medium compression anti-chafe liner, slide slits, and 4-way stretch for maximum range of motion. 10,000 is a direct-to-consumer company, so there's no middleman, and you're going to get premium fabrics, trims, and techniques that other brands simply cannot afford. They do collaborative product development. A team of over 200 athletes is out there testing their stuff, and they have over 9,500 5-star reviews. 10,000 is offering the listeners 15% off of your first purchase. Go to 10,000.cc. Listen to that. It's not .com. 10,000.cc and enter the code ClearedHot to receive 15% off your first purchase. That is 10,000.cc, code ClearedHot. This episode is also brought to you by BetterHelp. If there is anything out there that is interfering with your happiness or it's preventing you from achieving your goals, BetterHelp is here to help you. BetterHelp will assess your needs and match you with your own licensed professional therapist, and you can start communicating in under 48 hours. This is not a crisis line. This is not self-help. This is professional counseling done securely online. And there are a broad range of expertise available, which you may not have locally available depending on where you live. The service is available for clients worldwide because it's hosted on the internet, and you can log into your account anytime and send a message to your counselor. You'll get a timely and thoughtful response. Plus, you can schedule weekly video or phone sessions depending on what works best for your situation or schedule. BetterHelp is committed to facilitating great therapeutic matches, so they make it easy and free to change counselors if needed, and it's often more affordable than traditional offline counseling, and financial aid is available. Visit betterhelp.com/clearedhot. That is betterhelp.com/clearedhot, and join the over 1 million people taking charge of their mental health with the help of an experienced professional. In fact, so many people have been using BetterHelp that they are recruiting additional counselors in all 50 states. The special offer for the listeners, 10% off your first month at betterhelp.com. And that's it. We've done it, everybody. We're here. Episode number 200, the 2-century episode. And I can't think of a better person to share it with than my guest today, Micah Fink, who is currently the CEO and founder of Heroes and Horses. But before that, he was a U.S. Navy SEAL. And then after that, a paramilitary contractor with the CIA. So we talk a little bit about both of those things. And then we talk a lot about what he is doing now. Heroes and Horses, which was started in 2014. And it deals directly with post-traumatic stress veterans and providing them a path that they need to walk to get out of this situation that they may find themselves in. Micah does an incredible job of discussing the program in and of itself, so I'm going to shut up and let you enjoy episode number 200 with Micah Fink.
Okay, got the red smoke. Gun run, north or south, west of the smoke, west of the smoke. Okay, copy, west of the smoke. I'm looking at danger close now. Come on with it, baby, give it to me, I need it. Get cleared hot. Copy, cleared hot.
I think I've been coordinating with your staff for like 9 months now to get this done.
Yeah, I've just came out of the Wind River, so I've been gone on horseback over 100 days this year. So kind of like a legit.
That is a legit amount of time on a horse. Dude, your dick broom is fucking super varsity.
Prison Swiffer.
Seriously, it's very Tombstone. What character did Val Kilmer play? God damn it. He's Doc Holliday. That's what I'm talking about.
Yeah, it's legit. Yeah.
I couldn't grow that much facial hair. If you combined all the facial hair on my face, it wouldn't even make like your mustache.
Well, I mean, shout out to my mom. I breastfed till I was 9. Shout out, Mom.
Fair enough.
Yeah, that was my 18th wilderness I've ridden across on a horse. So, yeah, I just came out 2 days ago.
Really?
So I'm pretty tired out, and it's been a long season. So,
what's the purpose of doing that? Like, what's the desired end state you guys are shooting for when you do that?
So, Heroes and Horses I founded, and it's a 41-day long program. So
every time, 41 days.
41 days. Yeah, because the idea is that it takes pressure and time to change people, and I love how people take vets fishing and they kill a deer in Texas that's tied to a tree with a halter on it, and then
eating corn.
Then you remove the halter, and that's pretty difficult because he's laying on his back, and you gotta get the buckle. But I mean, in all reality, the question is like, what does it take for a person to self-actualize themselves outside their experience? And so, experience identification to me is the enemy of man. And so to get guys to change the way that they, think about themselves, I have to put them through a high pressure medium that happens over 41 days. So this last class, the guys left yesterday, 37 pounds a guy lost in 41 days. So
you're obviously not feeding them.
Well, they eat nothing but meat, vegetables, and salt. That's it. Water and black coffee.
I can get on board with all of that, actually.
That's it. That's all they have. Because listen, if you're bringing guys to help them and they're eating ho-hos and chugging Monster Energy drinks and eating Snickers bars and playing video games all day, if you got trouble sleeping, it's not the war in Iraq in 04.
How could you forget dipping?
And dipping, yeah. And then just like, upper decker, lower decker, I don't know why I sleep. It's the Taliban. Like, yeah, it's probably about 10,000 milligrams of caffeine and other substances.
Oh, yeah.
So 41 days is not, I think especially like veterans, I think the world in general, but like they have this addiction cycle that they get in, which is, you're always looking for someone to tell you what to do, what to think, what normal looks like, and you become this remora of information. And, you know, your mind becomes an amalgamation of all these ideas of other people's, but you don't actually have any of your own. Matter of fact, you get a master's degree in other people's ideas, but you don't have any of your own. And so, you know, we put them in a place that gets them away from the analytical operating system. And over 41 days, I mean, it's very difficult. So every day is Wim Hof. It starts at 4:30 in the morning. So they do breath work, they do PT. We partner with Jim Jones, Lisa Bouchard, like wrote a program for us, and then they
GYM Jones people.
Yeah, not to be confused with Freetown. Yeah. Which
that's a different type of Kool-Aid.
Yeah, but listen, we're all drinking digital Kool-Aid, so I don't know. I feel like
yeah,
it just doesn't kill you instantly.
Yes,
it just kind of erodes you slowly. It's just a different
indeed
different acceleration. So that's what the program essentially is, and so we do that. You know, the guys, they go through, you know, they learn to meditate, they learn, you know, horsemanship, they learn, you know, they got to read 2 books before they come in the program. They're doing this whole food eating. They spend 22 days in the wilderness. They go to working ranches. They, you know, it's just all these aspects that we have that affect the mind, the body, and the spirit in such profound ways that ultimately what the guy realizes when he graduates is that what he's looking for, he already has. He already had it all along, the answers for his own life. And so, you know, it's a lot. I mean, 2 out of 6 guys are on psychiatric meds. 155,000 guys have killed themselves since 2005.
By guys, you're talking the veteran community? Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, people, I just like, I get so boggled. There's 50,000 nonprofits in North America. And between 2012 and the end of 2020, we spent $92 billion on helping vets. And suicide rates are up to 24 per day. That's a problem. Like, and everyone's like, oh, I know, I got the best idea. Well, we're going to take vets and they're going to feed fish with miniature fish. And it's bullshit. People are dying and killing themselves because we have helped them to death. And by we, I mean society. Like, there's no personal agency and ownership in people's life anymore. It's always like, I go over here, I outsource my life to this stranger. It doesn't work out. I take these magical substances. I mean, I had a guy this year on 13 medications. You're 29 years old. You're on 13, getting their ass injected with some kind of chemical that, you know, blocks their synapses, and so they can't feel anything. And like, you know, it's very simple. Like, if you want to move beyond experience, get ready to suffer your way to grace and happiness. Like, period. That's how human beings evolve and change and actualize themselves outside experience. But unfortunately, we have a society of victims, and you know, people just I mean, the numbers are right there in front of everybody's faces. And so what do? You know, then we do a little Fox News piece, and the guy gets on there and he's got a dog and he's like, you know, 50 pounds overweight. And he's like, they're taking me on a cruise. Like, so healing. Of another burger. Like, I mean, this is what's happened. And we have created a generation of patients. They're perpetual patients. And to me, like, that's not the people that I want to roll with or be around, or I don't run around like, you know, Clint LaRue, he's like really funny. He's like, one of the guys, like, so what do you do? He's like, oh, I'm a vet. And he's like, okay. Like, so what do you do? He's like, well, I mean, yeah, like I'm a vet. And he's like, yeah, but that's not a verb.
To some people it is.
Yeah. Well, you're just going around veterining. And so guys, they go from, you know, I have guys apply to this program, a couple hundred guys a year. Some of them have been to 15, 16 different programs. I'm like, hey, you know what? Like, I'd love to go shoot at all sheep, and I'd love to do this, and I'd love to sail and fish and do all these things. But I mean, what does that really do for the evolution of your life and fulfilling like purpose and finding a meaning?
It almost seems like it becomes their life, that those experiences and being that vet as a verb becomes who they are as opposed to what they used to do.
Yeah, I mean, I think the enemy of man, really, like, of human development is experience identification. So you do something, you have an experience, and then you just perpetuate the identity of the thing you did, and that becomes your life. And so when guys realize that you're creating your own experience and you're living that experience, then you realize that you're living your own idea. And when people recognize the ability to create by what they believe and the choices they make, well, if those choices are made through the amalgamation of a billion things that you've heard to help you, your life goes into total chaos. And then we say, well, we got to get you back to normal. And it's like, okay, but what's normal for the elk is chaos for the fish. And what's normal for the fish is chaos for the elk. So who the fuck knows what normal is?
Yeah.
Normal is a baseline that you have to determine outside societal constructs. And I see vets, they come and they think like, I mean, these guys, like, I mean, I just obviously got out of the woods like 2 days ago, so I'm probably like a little punchy or whatever. But, but like, in all honesty, I just see it and I'm just like looking at people. I'm like, what the fuck is wrong with you? You think that like, if you have a problem in your life, the answer is to medicate it, to drug it, to get into these programs, to do all these things. And then 10 years of your life has gone by. Your kids have gone off to college, life's moved on, and you're sitting on the couch wearing the same freaking multicam jacket that you got 10 years ago, you know, waiting for coach to call and put you back in. You know, guys wear these shirts like, drink coffee, kill people. I'm like, you can't even walk up a flight of stairs.
Or see your penis when you're naked.
No, that's terrible.
It's a bad indicator.
It's the plastics. It's the plastics. They've shrunk our dicks. That's been their plan all along. Yeah.
Yeah. If you look down at the urinal and your stomach prevents you from, if you're a man, I mean, I suppose a woman could be in a urinal, but if you can't see your junk over your gut, you're
Dicky
trending in the wrong direction.
It's a dicky do. That's the term. Stop eating cellophane. It might come back. At least take the wrapper off before you get into the candies, you know, because it's shrinking our dicks. I mean, maybe that'll work. Maybe people will stop, you know, but
they won't.
Guys come, they do sugar. They're on this huge sugar detox, you know, they're on drug detox. They're getting off all these psych meds, all this other shit.
You're experiencing that when they're going through your course?
Yeah.
Because I was going to ask you, a guy, how many meds was the guy on? 19, you said?
13.
So how do you deal with that when you're in the field with them? Because that's almost a full-time job, making sure you take all that stuff.
My job is to, so this is the thing, like, I always tell people, let me preface this, I don't have any ideas for you. I just have a situation and a circumstance that is 41 days long. It's extremely arduous. It's very, very difficult. The average guy rides between 500 and 600 miles on their horses. They learn to shoe. They learn cold start. They learn everything to do with the animals, backcountry survival skills, wilderness skills, plus the PT, plus 4 o'clock in the morning, plus they have to walk 80 miles in the program just to eat the meals. So they're living in tents and wall tents a mile outside of camp one way. So if they forget their toothbrush, it's 2 miles, right? So they, like, you know, all these aspects. And so my thing is to just guide them. That's it. I'm just a guide. I let them figure it out on their own. Of course, they get like world-class training on every single aspect. It's comprehensive. But they got to do the work. They have to show up and they have to do it. They have to do all the work. And so, yeah, I mean, it's kind of crazy the first couple weeks. Sometimes you have guys that are going through huge mood swings and going through all kinds of stuff. But when you're committed, it doesn't matter. Because that commitment comes from your consciousness. It comes from your heart. It's not a mental thing. You know, I had an old water bottle we used to sell, and it said, will is everything. And that's what I used to think. I used to think like I could will myself to do anything. And I realized I was misdirected. Like, belief is everything. And will comes from the mind, and you need that. And it's actually belief. And when you have that belief, and these guys are desperate to change their life, it doesn't really matter. It overrides everything. And so every guy that's, you know, walked out of this program this year has left. I had a team guy that came through in the second class whose testosterone points came up 200 points when he left.
Just through the experience you put him through.
Just through the experience. And so, you know, we do the breath work. So we do the Wim Hof. They get in the ice tank every single day. You know, they're learning to meditate. You know,
diet is a huge portion too.
Diet's huge.
People don't realize they can be crushing their testosterone just by what they're jamming down their suck.
Yeah, eating the plastic and shrinking their dicks.
That's where we always arrive back to. I like where your head's at.
They're coming for them. Evil little devices.
No, there's so many ways you can fuck yourself up without even knowing it. Probably unintentionally as well, too.
Yeah, I think what happens is we don't look at the whole person. You know, with all the COVID going around, you know, like they didn't tell anybody like, hey, why don't you eat a carrot?
Yeah.
Nobody even said eat a carrot. Nowhere. It's like, okay.
Or exercise or focus on sleep,
get in a
recovery.
Sauna, try that, maybe like have one, like instead of having 2 burgers, just have 1 burger. Like nobody said anything like that because we have, it's like the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse. People think like, the monotheistic religions of the world tell you it's like these guys are going to come from everywhere and they're going to like come with these swords and they're going to end the world. But that's actually not what that means at all. The 4 horsemen of the apocalypse represents us, the individual. So like you have the black horse, which represents intellect, a person who is just versed in the 5 senses. So your sciences, your anti, mind before matter, universe type people, intellect. And you can collect a bunch of things with the intellect, a bunch, but you can only go so far and you can't put the pieces together. You're missing something. Then you have the red horse, which brings chaos because it's emotions. Your whole life is based on how you feel and your responses, and you're chasing these things around the world, following emotion that leads you into chaos. Then you have the pale horse. They say a beautiful person dies twice. Once when you lose your looks, and once when you lose your life. And so
Fortunately for me, there's only the latter.
yeah. Yeah.
One death for me.
I'm a beautiful person. I just don't recognize it. I hide it under this mustache. But because so here you have people running around injecting their faces. They're getting their nose stuff. They're getting shrimp shells installed in their cheekbones.
How crazy is that shit?
It's insane. I just saw a guy just died from injecting his balls with silicone. And
did you say his balls?
His balls.
What's the end state there? How many people are seeing your balls?
It's like Dave Chappelle said, smooth as eggs, baby.
I mean, seriously, but
no more wrinkles.
God damn. I mean, unless you're wearing a highly modified G-string on backwards where you're blasting out both sides, how many people are getting a look at those suckers?
Man, this is the world we live in. You got people with micro dicks eating plastic and dudes with giant balls that are dying. Self-induced.
All right, so we got black, red, and pale.
So we got the pale. So the pale is all materialism, right? So and I always tell people like all guys that come to the program, they're like, man, if you had all the money in the world right now, what would you be doing? They never have a plan. And I'm like, then why are you working? What's the end state? And they think money's the answer. And I'm like, well, if I gave you $1 billion, but I put you on a deserted island, you die. A billionaire. Right.
I went through that phase of my life, though, where I chased money over fulfillment and satisfaction. And I look back and I made some of the worst decisions in my life at that time. It was shortly after exiting the military. Unhappy, unfulfilled, personal relationships were struggling. And I'm like, I need this. I got to get this salary. Yeah. If I can get this salary, I'm good.
You're on the hook.
And then one day I quit. I was like, fuck this job. Yeah. And since then, I've tried not to make those decisions, and any brand that'll hit me up, they want to talk about money first, I'm like, oh, you just fucked up. We're done. And I feel so much better about where I am as a person, but I also feel like I needed to make those mistakes.
Yeah, you have to, it's the material world. It's like we think because of how we're brought up, like, hey, maybe you'll become a doctor and you'll become a lawyer and you'll become something. So in our lives, we're always trying to become a thing. Right. And so we kind of become that thing, and then it's not quite what we thought. And so then we're trying to become the next thing, and we just keep trying to become things, and we think money's the answer. But unfortunately, money only works if you're playing this game. But when you decide, hey, I'm actually not going to play the game, I'm going to let the game work for me. And sure, money's a tool and I need to have those resources, but a job is what I do and a purpose is how I live my life. I'm not going to be a cog in someone else's idea, and I'm going to give the best years of my life away so that I can help them become a thing. When you start to take ownership of your life and you look at that system for what it is and how it controls us, then you realize that enlightenment essentially is not getting all the things that you want, but it's realizing that you never wanted them in the first place. And so, I mean, look at every fucking dude that everyone's following around. Like, they're like, what are they? They're wearing a robe. They got like some robes and some flip-flops on. You're like, And we're like, oh, we read their books and you go to their things and there's these gurus, these brown dudes with beards and they're all beads and shit. Like, they're not like rolling around in any like, freaking jacked up 300ZXs or anything. Like
Except for the dudes that were in Portland. God damn it. It was a Netflix documentary series. My man
Wild West.
Fuck yeah. My man has some Rolls Royces.
The Rajneesh
The Rajneeshis, that's right.
Yeah.
They had some robes and some high-speed shit.
Yeah, they had some wild orgies too.
I think that's all they actually did.
They had those screaming orgies that were apparently like you return to the womb and like rebirth.
How do you get caught up in that? That's one thing I have not really been able to wrap my head around very well.
Because all these cults and all these things, which everything's a cult, I don't care what it is, it always becomes a cult. Like I don't. Like,
the teams are definitely not a cult. What are you talking about?
Listen, I got into archery hunting. Like I've killed a couple of really nice bulls. Now I'm just like, we have a ranch and I just shoot a cow and I don't really care. I killed 2 bulls, but I went down.
You're talking about a cow elk, not a milk cow, people. So don't freak out.
No,
even though milk cows, I think would probably
I hit those
be
with
delicious.
sledgehammers, and much easier and cheaper.
Yeah.
So my bow is Cobalt.
Yeah, man.
But no, we. Yeah, I mean, I got into that, and all of a sudden it was like I got into this like bow cult where it was like all of a sudden like I go to have some beers, like I'm like everyone's like dressing and has the Toyota with the stickers and the racks and the things, and next thing I know I'm like, oh shit, I gotta get some new gear. Like I gotta be a thing now. All of a sudden like I'm in this, and then next thing I know I'm in the venture bike world, and I look at those dudes and I'm like, I need a Johnny Adventure jacket. Like I gotta have this, and it just becomes, you can't just do these things anymore. You have to become a thing. Well, why? It's the same way people show up because they outsource the idea of hope and meaning. That's what it is, and community. And so that sells because that's how we are. That's why everyone's grouped together living inside cities. And I think these people like that, if you watch that documentary and you listen to the attorney that got sucked into it, he's a smart guy. I mean, he's not an idiot. He's like an Ivy League scholar.
To this day, he's still into it. Like at the end, like he's writing the book. I think that's how it ends. Spoiler alert.
Oh, God. Maybe he's not that smart.
I've actually considered reaching out to him and trying to get him on the podcast just to pick his brain and have a better understanding of what it is, maybe how that happens. It's fascinating to me.
You kill yourself in the Jim Jones cult.
Yeah.
I mean,
that's another one. Like, hey, man, we need you to drink this Kool-Aid. Be like, you drink it first, and I'm going to wait for like 30 minutes and see what happens.
I don't do purple. I would.
Yeah. That mindset is fascinating to me. I've never understood it, but I'm fascinated by it.
Well, I was having this, everyone's all political, and I hate politics, and I tell people, like, listen, they're arguing back and forth. I'm like, they're the same thing. It's wings of the same bird. What they do is they sell you illusions of choice and illusions of community. And it's all just illusion. Like, oh, this year you get to pick from these guys. Like, they're really just the same. Like, oh, we have different issues we fight over. Sure, because of course you have to have different issues that you fight over, right? But it's all just mechanisms of control. And like, if you look at like Constantine, he's like, oh, okay, I declare everybody Christian. Catholic means universal. Okay, so I declare them Christian, and then if you don't agree with me, then I'm just going to ride over here. I'm going to chop you up and kill you. And everyone's like, hey, it seems good. I mean, like, cool hat, dude. Like, yeah, I'm in, right? Like, and so, I mean, if you look at it, the game hasn't changed throughout the entire history of mankind. It's just the same story, but a different script. The tools that they have changed and evolved, but the processes are still the same. They sell hope to people. It's hope and community is what it sells. I don't understand. It's a psychological propensity of people to just, I mean, like if I saw that dude riding around in a Rolls Royce, that was like, give me all your stuff, move out here to Antelope, Oregon. I'll bang your wife for you so you can focus on God. And I'm like, thanks, man. Woo!
Been looking for this my whole life.
My whole life. It's arrived. Now I don't have to deal with that thing. Like, I mean, it's a bizarre thing. And I think we have to understand the propensities as human beings to make sure, like, and check ourselves and say, like, hey, how are we being controlled? Like, ultimately. And then, because it's like, you just wake up one day and you're doing something, you're like, how did I get into this situation? Like, you just hit the brakes for a second, and we've all had that moment in our life. And it's because subliminally in our lives, we're being just programmed. It's like what I tell the guys at the military. I'm like, how do you take a guy that's never been in a fist fight in his entire life, grew up in dad's farm in Iowa, never done anything, wasn't a tough guy. 27 weeks later, he's 5,000 miles away, shooting anybody that gets in his way. What happened in the 27 weeks? You've never even shot a deer, right? It's a program, right? So they take your hair away, they take your car away, they take your money away, they take your clothes away, they take your language away, they take the way you tell time away, they take everything away, assimilate you. And then, once you've been assimilated, then you get trained. And you get told the story, and you get trained, and then that training continues, and then you move up through the ranks, and according to what your, God-given ability is how far you're going to go at doing what? Killing people. I mean, that's the end state, right?
So of the armed forces.
Of the armed forces, right?
Well, for a small majority of the armed forces.
Right, but the
Minority,
overall
I should
goal
say,
of the
small
military
Yeah.
is global dominance, right, through force. And so if you look at, like, in 20 years, 7,000 people died in Iraq and Afghanistan, maybe just a little bit more.
20 years from tomorrow, we're recording this September 10th, so people can have some context.
Yes, yeah, and I've been reflecting a lot about that because, like yourself and so many other people, that moment changed my life. I was at the World Trade Centers.
That day?
Yeah.
No shit.
Yeah. So I was so I grew up in upstate New York.
It said the Catskills in your bio.
Catskill, New York boxing gym. Yeah.
So, full disclosure, my knowledge of the geography of New York is poor. For far too long in my life, I essentially thought that the entire state of New York was the boundaries of the city. I am embarrassed to say that out loud, but for far too many years, that's what I thought. So I don't have a fucking clue where the Catskills are.
So the Catskills are like the Montana of New York State. It is very kind of backwoods, like very conservative backwoods area, dairy farms, cattle farms, paper mills, timber mills.
I know where Rochester and Rome are. Is it anywhere near there?
I know where both of them, but Rochester is like probably 3 hours from where I grew up.
Okay.
So I had 600 people in my town. I had 12 people in my graduating class. Very small town. I grew up working on a dairy farm, and my dad was on the railroad. And I mean, very blue collar town. And I became a lineman. I was a boxer. I played drums in a ska band, and my claim to fame, I was a sparring partner for Ray Mercer, heavyweight champ of the world. Shout out to Ray Mercer. And matter of fact, I was telling
It sounds like he just punched you in the face.
Well, I'm not as easy as I may look to hit. And if you want to give it a shot, let's do it. But
no, I'm a pacifist.
But he actually hit me. We were in North Carolina. I was getting ready for a fight, and he hit me so hard. It was the first time in my life I'd never been knocked out in the ring. I did get knocked out in a fight in high school, but I got hit when I wasn't looking. And but he hit me so hard that I kneeled down on the ground, and I remember there was like 37 rays, and he has that gold tooth. He's like, come on. And he's got that. And I remember I was like looking at it. He's called me like big white or whatever, which, by the way, you can't say that anymore, but he could say that then.
It was a term of endearment.
It was a term of endearment. He kept saying it. And I remember like looking at him, and I got up and we finished the rounds, and I went home, and for like a week, I was going through the 18 Delta medical course at the time, and I started boxing again in the amateurs, and I just I had a headache for like over a week.
I believe they call that a concussion.
Yeah. And I just remember thinking like, I'm good on this. Like, I've been doing it my whole life. And I was like, if this is the level that everyone's hitting people at, that's it. I'm done. I'm done. And
people watch it on TV. I don't think they have any understanding of even what it sounds like in person. Whap! You're like, oh, I don't ever want to get in there. No. Ever.
I used to ride my bike. So I learned to box where Mike Tyson learned to box, Catskill, New York. And so I used to ride my bike down there. My family was really poor. I couldn't play sports. They didn't have money to even drive me. or buy me any sports uniforms or anything. I wanted to play football. We couldn't afford it. I lived in the same bedroom of an old farmhouse with my mom and dad until I was like 3rd grade. So boxing's there because all you got to do is show up and like be willing to get punched in the head, and they give you the stuff because there's always a better dude in there that walk in there like, hey kid, you want to be a fighter? You're like, sure. You like get in there, and then you're just someone's bag of meat until you get better. But so I grew up there, and then I became a telephone pole lineman. So my dad's buddy had a company, and I started working. I got off the dairy when I was 13, and then started working for him, just picking up sticks and shit and driving trucks, and became a lineman. And so by the time I was 20, I had my own line crew and everything. And
Still in Catskill?
Yep. So I was working in New York City. So I would drive down. It was about 3.5 hour drive outside New York City. I would drive down, live in, and I have some like dark memories from those times. I was like 16 years old. I'd spend my summer living in New York City with like these vagrant line workers shooting up heroin and like,
Jesus.
oh yeah, watching porn, like horrors, like, and I'm like in my sleeping bag. My mom would make my food for me in these like little lunches, Christian family, like, and like I'd be like in the corner, and these dudes were like rough dudes. So, I'm 16, I'm on the line crew, and, I'm climbing telephone poles, and they would take my pay if I didn't. So for every telephone pole, I would have to run down with all my equipment on, all my climbing gear and everything, and I would have to run down and get to the pole before they got the truck and the equipment to the pole to string the lines, because we got paid by the foot. And if I missed one pole, they would dock me $20. So, and I would do that 6 days a week or 5 days a week. And then I would drive home that night, spend 2 days back home, and then go back down Monday morning. And so, I ended up getting my own crew, my own trucks, all my own shit. I had my own contracts, and I'm making like, I don't know, $800-900 a day I'm taking home. So great money back then.
That's spectacular, man.
Yeah, really good money. And so I'm in Queens, New York on September 11th on a railroad telephone pole. I was putting in a power supply, so grounding off all the power lines and everything when the first plane hits the World Trade Center. And
how far? Again,
Queens is right across the river,
okay.
So you're staring right at.
So you probably actually heard it.
I just saw the smoke. I didn't hear it.
Okay.
And I wasn't really sure. It was kind of like a hazy day of what was going on. And I had a Nextel. My buddy hits me on the Nextel, which was high-speed technology for all you millennials out there.
Are we talking the flip that also had the push-to-talk feature?
Yeah, the push-to-talk feature.
Not many people know how money that was.
It was so hard to have phone sex, but it's like, right now, your boot... It's like I remember those pagers where you would call up and you'd have to tell the operator the message.
Oh yeah.
And I had a pager, and I remember you'd call up and it would scroll across the screen like really slow, and then they're supposed to say anything, they're just the operator, and I would call and I would always be like, I just want to rub you on your butt. Like she's like, sir, I can't say that. And I'm like, I thought you guys were supposed to say anything. Like they would always
I'm trying to say this. You're just the medium I'm passing this through.
It was so embarrassing because I'd have to get like my guts up to be like, hey, I want to say something to my high school girlfriend. She's like 300 pounds today, by the way. But dodged that bullet. Shout out to my wife. It was hot. And
good God.
Yeah. So I'm like, so my buddy calls me up and he's like he's working over on Hempstead Turnpike, and he's like, hey man, that airplane just hit the World Trade Center. And I'm like, yeah, whatever, dude.
Which was just about everybody's first response.
Yeah. I was kind of like, and I'm on the pole, like I'm hanging on my hooks. And so I kind of like look and I see like some smoke coming out, and I come down the pole and there was a door open. And this is like a memory that's with me for the rest of my life. I remember I like walked over, I saw this lady's door open, and I kind of like knocked on the door, and I was like, hey, she's like, come on in. And so I walked inside, and she's crying, and she's staring at the screen. Of course, now there's all the news reporters,
Yep.
And they're like giving these kind of chaotic things, and people are running around everywhere. And she's like, my husband's a Port Authority police officer, and I can't get a hold of him. And I was like, man, I'm sorry. And I stood there for like 5 minutes. I didn't say another word. I walked out, got in the truck. Guy I grew up with my whole life. Weird kid. And he's working for me at the time, and I said, hey, I'm going back to the yard. Like, I don't know, like see what's going to happen or something. And so turn the radio on, next plane hits, and I'm like, America's under attack. So of course I didn't have any skills besides, boxing, and that was it. and I had all these cable IDs and everything. So I go back to the yard, I grab my car, and I tell him, I'm going in the city right now. And he's like,
Towers are still standing at this point.
they're falling, right? Like, so
Yeah.
I'm listening to the radio, like this is happening like in real time. So I get in there, I haul ass, I get to the tunnel, Lincoln Tunnel, whatever's there on the 495. I'm the only car. They blocked everybody. I'm the only car on the highway. I had a red Audi A6. Don't ever buy one. And I'm doing like, 120, 130. I'm just flying. There's nobody on the road. It was the most surreal experience because it's New York City. Like, there's always cars 24/7.
Yeah, it's like LA traffic.
Right. Just
Pack a lunch.
constantly. 2:00 in the morning, it's the same thing. And I get there and they're guns up at the tunnel. And
Where were you going and what were you going to do?
I had no idea. And I had no plan, which is kind of how I operate. And I just believe. No, I figured, I don't know. I thought maybe there was an attack or I really didn't know. But I didn't have any training or anything like that. But this is the thing, like in my mind, I was a very tough kid. I was tough. And I don't know. I just figured if there was an attack, I would just go down and start beating people up.
Yeah, if there's a scrap, you're going to go get into.
Yeah. And so I get down there, they stop me at the tunnel, guns up on me. I've got all these like IDs. The guys come over and I'm like, they're like cable IDs and, telephone and light. And I'm like, I'm a demolition crew. Like they called me in. They're like, bring it in. Like tight security. Shout out to NYPD. So they let me through. I'm in the tunnel by myself. I'm hauling ass. I park on Chariot on Montgomery Street. I get out and the smoke is insane.
So they've fallen at this point.
Yeah, and
Okay.
people are running and screaming. They look like gray zombies. I ripped the sleeve off my shirt. I put it around my face and I ran into the smoke. And I was there when that, the mysterious Tower 7 fell. I was probably 75 yards away from it. I got buried for, 3 hours or so. I couldn't even see anything. And then I found a dead police officer a few hours later. I found an arm. I found a torso of a person. Their guts were all over the road. And they're underneath like sheet metal and rubble. And I was pulling out, found like a hand and then like IDs and phones. And so I took a hard hat and I tied like a rubber tube around it and put some of those like disposable Ever-Ready flashlights on there. And I climbed inside the World Trade Center with my buddy, like deep, like down, shimmying down the structures. And the sound was the most haunting, evil sound of the metal going like,
The shifting.
like the shifting. And it was like steam and pipes and underground subway, like everything that was destroyed. It was like creaking. And so it was total chaos. There was no organization and there was no like, you'd see firemen going by and stuff going by. And I'm just out there with like a, ripped off like Larry the Cable Guy shirt on and this hard hat with a bicycle tire on it. So September 12th happens, the morning of.
You're still there.
I'm still there.
Yeah.
So I'm like sitting right when there's a little iconic picture of them putting up the American flag with the exoskeleton. Like I'm like sitting right over there by the water. And there was a smashed up bagel cart. I grabbed some food out of there and I went and I sat by the East River. And for the first time in a really long time in my life, like I cried, like I was crying, and wasn't like a big crier. And I felt like death. Like, I felt.
Well, were you there looking for life? Were you looking for survivors?
Yeah. That's what I was doing. I was like, at the time, I don't want to like, I wasn't like a rescue person or anything like that, but I just wanted to do something. That's my nature. There is no rhyme or reason. That's my nature. I think I was just born like that. And so I'm sitting there with my buddy and I'm crying and he's like, dude, like, what are we going to do? All the phone lines are down. You can't make any calls. And I just looked at him and I said, I'm going to fucking kill whoever did this. And he was like, okay. And he like pats me on the back and I went back. I tried to join the army and I had the Army was like jam packed. Everybody's trying to join the Army. I tried to join the Army, be an Army Ranger. And so I'm at the recruiter's office a bunch, and they were, telling me, infantry and do this, and then you can work your way. They're giving me all the bullshit. And I never wanted to join the military. I'm like a kind of a nonconformist by nature. And so here I am, and then like some like fat Navy dude walks out in his plumber outfit, and
it's an accurate description, actually.
Yeah, and no one's in there. Everyone's in the Marine Corps. Everyone's like going to the Army. Like, I mean, there's lines in upstate New York of people joining because I'm, that's the community that I come from up there, and very patriotic. And so, yeah, I ended up, a guy comes and is like, what do you want to do? What are you doing? You're here all the time. I'm like, oh, I'm trying to get a Ranger. They're giving me a run around. He goes, why do you want to be an Army Ranger? And I was like, because they're the best. And he's like, no, they're not. And he's like, let me show you a video. So he brings me some like CJ Crockett's video of like, doing like Hail Mary. And I'm like climbing rocks. They got swamp uniforms on. They're shooting out of the mud, like skydiving. It's all 80s like video.
Oh, yeah.
And I was like, man, this is like badass. Like, this is like really cool. I had no idea I had to go through Buzz. I didn't know there was all this training. He's like, yeah, you got to like sign up. And
it's the fine print.
Fine print. Yeah. I could barely swim. And so I sign up and I get a SEAL contract. And
is this still in September of 01?
No, so there's 2003.
Okay.
And so because the whole time I was getting this runaround from the Army because they wanted to go to become a Ranger and they wanted to put me in the infantry. And I was like, I'm not doing the infantry.
Yeah.
Like I scored, I at least have a heartbeat. Like, I scored okay in the ASVAB. So I was like, I'm not dumb. I'm like, they're like, listen, you get in the infantry, you're out there grunting it out with the boys. I'm like, I've watched MASH growing up. I'm not going to do that. like, we were a big MASH family.
Yeah.
So I mean, September 11th to me it changed the course of my life because I really, my aspirations were to keep playing in my band and boxing and being a lineman,
When you were right there at Ground Zero on the day, I mean, was it just kind of defined by its chaos? Because like you said, you're a dude with a makeshift helmet on and a T-shirt wrapped around your face. Did you just, I mean, obviously you were looking for signs of life. Did you just at some point decide that you were going to leave there? I'm just curious about the scene itself.
Yeah, the scene was like...
'Cause I would imagine, I mean, people probably weren't questioning you as to what you were doing.
No.
Yeah, and so you could have left at any time that you wanted to. How did you decide or get to the place where, like, hey, I've done everything that I can. I'm going to leave.
Well, so I found that police officer. I found him. He was underneath a police car, and, I saw a hand sticking out. And I went over, and I was like, I saw it kind of from a distance, so I ran over, and there was, what had happened was he must have, tried to hide underneath the car when the towers were falling, and the car must have, from the impact, must have lifted up and then just crushed him. I don't know. I'm not a detective, but I started screaming for people, and random civilians were out there, and we got the car and lifted it up and pulled him out, and his whole face was mushed in with rocks and gravel and all kinds of other things. And I remember standing there looking at this guy, and it kind of shocked me. It was this finality. I'd never experienced that before at that point in my life. And I just was started thinking in my head after that, there's survivors, and that was my first thought, that I was going to find somebody trapped in the rubble, which never did.
Yeah.
Everybody was pretty much dead. And I just wanted to help. I think what it really was, and it's probably what I do today, is I just didn't want to be a victim. I think I was I think even from my child, I was always afraid of being a victim of things. So I never let things just happen to me. I always had a response.
Yeah.
And so I think that's why I did it. I mean, was nobody particularly special. I was a small town kid from upstate New York. I wasn't a high school star. I didn't play, any great sports, or nobody cheered for me or anything. I just, yeah, I just was that kind of guy. I knew when I went to Buds, I remember I showed up there. I read all the books. The first book I read, of course, was Rogue Warrior. I was like, oh man, I'm gonna fit right into this community, like smoking, drinking, fighting.
I read that book and unfortunately thought it was a nonfiction.
Yeah, me too. Yeah. I was like,
there's a few creative liberties, shall we say, taken by Mr. Marcinko.
Yeah, I showed up at Buzz with like a pack of cigarettes and a 6-pack. Like, let's roll, boys. Like,
they're like, yeah, fuck right off.
Yeah, UCMJ. So, yeah, but I showed up there. I remember like looking at all these guys and I was like, damn, like everyone had like all these like crazy muscles and they're like, you know, they all from like Texas football player, all these guys, they were like the athletes with perfect jawlines. And I remember I showed up and I was like, Here's the only thing I remember thinking was like, I could beat the shit out of every one of these dudes. Like, that's the only thing I thought. That was like my only defense as a person. Like that, because I was like very intimidated, like thinking like, but I knew that I was like tough. And I just remember like, you know, all the instructors like, and I just knew I was tough. I knew I was tough. Like, I came from a tough family. I grew up tough. My grandpa was a mobster. He did 10 years in federal prison. Like, my dad was there. My dad did a hard time. Like, they're like a tough people, tough. And so that's the only thing I had going for me, was that I was tough. I had no other like marketable skills.
So in my time as a Buds instructor going back, you would think that most of the people who showed up to Buds were tough, and many of them were, but a lot of them had gotten to there through talent.
Talent, yeah.
And the mechanism of Buds, the curriculum, man, it hasn't changed much. If you take a look at what they did way back in the early days, it's pretty similar. The recipe of the sand and the water and fucking telephone poles, you're probably like, oh, sweet, I'm fucking in the Navy. Telephone poles, great. I had no idea you were
Give
alive.
me some cable.
Yeah, you're probably like, oh, hey, boys, I know a lot about these things.
Don't worry.
But the talent doesn't get you as far as people would think. It will get you where you want to go if you're tested in that very one narrow tranche that you're talented in. The toughness is what will actually get you to the end of that program.
Yeah.
Because you take a really good swimmer, put him under a boat with 6 other dudes, get him a little tired, get him a little hungry, he's like, fuck this shit. Yeah. Or, you know, we would see D1 players come in there from, you know, name your sport, and you get them. That's the whole thing of Buds, is to challenge you with something that you're not talented in, and let's see how tough you actually are. Yeah. And it surprises many people. I'll just leave it at that.
Yeah, I mean, I think, to me, I think Buds is like, it's such a, it's not even that it's all about you. Yeah. You know, that's the thing, is like,
it's an individual team sport is how I describe it.
Yeah, it's an individual team sport. And I think like that's kind of like what I do at like Heroes and Horses, where it's like a self-selection course where you're like, your life is crumbling, you have all these issues, you know, you've bought into all these other things, and now you have to face yourself. That's it. You have to face yourself. And so the situations and circumstances that they're in over 41 days, it really is a mirror reflection of who they are. And more oftentimes people fall in love with the story of what they think they are. But then when the story gets tested, they quit. They bail. You know, it's like some guys want to be veterans. They're like, wait a second, if I don't have like PTSD and I'm not like a disabled vet, then can I go to disabled vet riding bicycles with Clay Walker? Can I go to like the Super Bowl still? Can I still hang out with my buddies? Can I still wear my, you know, tactical clothes? Like, can I, you're talking about a complete shattering of an identity. Yeah. And so when that, I think, happens and people get tested, you know, that's when you find out who you really are. And I think like that's what Buds is really. It's just like, you know, I either accept this or I don't accept this.
What class were you?
254.
254. I came back and was teaching second phase in the early 260s. You just barely snuck by, you motherfucker.
Yeah, we had, I think I started off with Rick Smithers.
Smithers, fantastic name.
Yeah, it was actually really funny because later on in my career, I was at a undisclosed base. I was a CTO there, and there was a guy who we kept having issues with it. His call sign was really cleverly Rick. And and I was with another team guy, buddy of mine, and I'm like, yo, who's this guy, you know, like going off. And so I'm like, let's meet. And it shows up and I'm like, hello, sir. Like small world. So yeah. And then
So you were East Coast team guy, right?
nope, I was STV guy.
STV.
Yeah.
I, as a second phase instructor, used to tell the students, I'm not joking when I say this, if given the choice between an SDV or suicide, you should kill yourself.
Yeah.
And I've never been in one.
Yeah.
I've seen one in real life one time in Guam, I believe. And I immediately went the other direction for fear that they would put me in the back of it.
It is, if they had it as a part of Buds, I don't think anybody would graduate. It is.
It's a mini. Well, we should unpack what it is at whatever level. I actually don't even know what portions of that thing are sensitive.
It's highly sensitive, especially the new one that's coming out. But it's a
mini submarine, for lack of a better word.
So we did national tasking. I was on that, and so that was part of history, and I was pretty stoked. At the time when I got sent there, I was like angry,
as are most people when they receive
like,
their orders to an SDV team,
because I had heard from everybody like, oh, this is the word, but actually I wouldn't wish it any other different in any way.
Really?
Yeah, like, and because we had great people over there, like, guys like Billy Lumpkin, and we had like a lot of like really good people over there. And then when we got tasked with the national tasking from the president, it was like we got everything.
Yeah, it's a big deal.
It was a huge deal. We trained for 17 months for one mish. And to be a part of history like that will never be disclosed was definitely a highlight. And then, I got to augment Blue Squadron right after that.
Yep.
And so spent some time over there. And yeah, so STV it's a cool place, but it's a different mission, it's a undersea mobility. And I think like the scary thing is when you learn and you get read into the sub world, I don't look at things normally anymore because you realize like everyone's thinking the sky. Everyone's thinking, the intercontinental ballistic missiles and these things. Like, and I'm like thinking like coming up freaking the Flathead Lake, like like vaporized, like,
Yeah.
They're scary. Subs are scary, and they're not something that get a lot of attention. Nations don't advertise them. They're
probably rightfully so.
Rightfully so, and they're a very, very powerful thing. And the subs are, it's like they said too, 60 men go down and 30 couples come back. So it's
accurate.
Yeah.
I say that having never been a submariner. So
yeah. So I felt fortunate to have been a part of it, but it was very difficult. There's times like, so we have a sweat lodge on our ranch, Lakota Sweat Lodge, built by a Lakota medicine man. And so day 41, before the guys graduate, they have to do a 4-window warrior purification ceremony. So there's 7 ancient ceremonies that are left, and 2 have been lost, so there's 5 remaining, and this is one of them, and something that I started doing, and like it's really like been powerful in my life. And the first time I went in, I was with another couple team guy buddies, and we all went, and I remember like looking at this thing, and all of a sudden I was like, of course I watch all the YouTube videos, I hear all this stuff, I read all the reviews, and I get in there, and they shut the door
on the sweat lodge.
Yeah, and the drumming, the heat, and I'm packed in the back, and all of a sudden, like, the only thing I could think about was like being in the fucking SDV, and I'm like, because like we had guys drown, like, and die in there, like,
in the back.
Yeah, you get tangled up in those, and then the dive profiles. We have our platoon changed the U.S. Navy regs on the dive profiles because we would dive, helium, nitrogen, oxygen, open circuit, closed circuit, rebreather. You would transition through all these things, and I'm like,
you're talking about that all on one dive.
All on one dive.
I don't fucking want any part of any of that.
So like, of course they tell you, of course they're giving you the class. I'm not paying attention. I'm hungover. And, I was dealing with some chicks, like, and never given a class on how to use these computers. And of course I'm not paying attention. I get into the thing, and it's like, I remember like double red is bad. Like it's like blink, 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 and then I'm like, oh shit, like, and it's like solid green. I'm like, too much, like shit, like, and I pretty much just like, I would look over at, of course, every other team guy's doing the same thing.
Yeah.
Like I look over to like, we got to crack like a little red Kevlar. He's like, I can't like blink. I'm like, it's like, no, like other one, like, and you got to keep adding all these different gases, and so you transition and you come into target, and then you lock out of the thing. So everything's by memorization, and it's by knots. So you have to remember, like, this guy's bag, comms gear, sniper gear, all the SR gear, everything that's coming out. And then you got to hang on the outside, and then it locks and you break away, and then they sink away. And so then you're on the surface. And yeah, it sucks.
And then you're in a sweat lodge feeling like you're in the back
I'm in
of
the
that thing.
sweat lodge, and they start the drumming, calling up the spirits and everything. And I'm like in there, and all of a sudden I was like, I had to do everything in my mind not to just like totally panic, because you don't know if your eyes are open or closed.
It's that dark.
Yeah. And it's hot. And there's 4 windows that you go through so there's a series of time limits that you're in there so there's like the purification phase, which is usually the most difficult. And I got in there and it was like my brain like fired up, and it's like, you're gonna die. I started thinking about YouTube videos, like all the things I watched, like the reports. And but by the end of it, when I finished, it was definitely one of the most profound experiences. So I've done 2 days ago was the 5th one that I've done. And so that's something we've integrated. But I remember when I went in there, like, the reason why I'm bringing it up is because it reminded me of being in the SDV. Like, you can't see. You bottom up underneath a aircraft carrier or destroyer. You attach to the bottom, and there's hoses and cables and gear, and everything's ballasted, and like you get your foot hung up. We had a chief that died like that. You can't. It's disorienting. Like, and then the bioluminescence and all those things, and you're like, next thing you know, you're like upside down. Like, I had a FSA from 80 feet.
Oh, no shit. That's a free swimmer ascent, meaning it's a slow, controlled breath release on the way to the surface, so your fucking lungs don't explode.
Yeah, my whole mass separated at 80 feet, and it was dark, and like next thing I know, I'm like underwater working on a thing, and all of a sudden I'm like, and I'm like ditch everything, and I'm like, like, it was like the worst thing, and so diving is, there's people that panic.
It's high consequence
Because you mess around in the water, you drown. So
what do you mean 2 of the 7 are missing?
So if you look at like Native American culture, so when Columbus arrived in the North American continent, there was 60 million natives, right? And by the start of World War I, there was 800,000. So that's what we would call an extinction event, right? And I think there was 10,000 bison, so 30 million had been killed. And that was part of Ulysses S. Grant's policy that every dead buffalo is a dead Indian. Was the policy. So they killed their food source. And so until 1978, they outlawed the sweat lodge in North America. They outlawed their religious ceremonies and their practices. Obviously, we see what's happened with the boarding schools that they've been finding. They just found 700 kids in Canada at the boarding schools, and so
I didn't realize the number was that high.
Yeah,
holy shit.
Yeah, so that was part of the. It was a colonel, and I can't remember his name, but the policy, you could Google it, was save the Indian, or save the man, kill the Indian. So the U.S. passed a policy, I think in 1876, where they would take all children 4 years old till they were 18 years old away from their families because they were barbarians. And so they put them into boarding schools, and then they were heads were shaved. They were given American name, given Christian names. Their language were taken away from them. All ceremonies were banned. So if they did anything religious, any dancing, any singing, they were beaten. And then, to pay for their boarding school, they would have to work in the trades from noon, till 5 or whatever it was. And so a lot of kids died in those trades. It was, fabrication of all kinds of weapons of war and metallurgy and textiles. And so the children died. And when they would die, since they were really unnamed, they would just put them in mass graves. So the Biden administration has blocked the investigation of any of these, like the Carlisle boarding school. And
really?
Yeah, they're blocking it because they don't want to dig that up. So I learned about this from the Lakota medicine man, who was telling me that, that they, until 1978, this had to be done in secret. I was like, 1978, really? Like,
That's just a minute ago.
Yeah, it's just a minute ago. And so there's the sun dancing. So the sun dancing is where they pierce you in your back, and you hang from a pole for, I think, 3 days, no food and water. And then to come off that, and you really go into a transcendental state, and then they tie buffalo skulls to you, and you have to run through the crowd until they rip out of you, and that's the end. And then there is the Anipi, which is the sweat lodge, and then there is the Vision Quest, which is it's 4 days, 4 nights, 5 days, no food or water in the mountains alone. And then there is I forget what the other one is. Oh, then there is the 24 hours no water in the sweat lodge in there. So I'm doing that in the fall. And so it's very, very powerful. And
there used to be 2 more, but the knowledge has just evaporated.
Eradicated.
Yeah.
Yeah, eradicated.
Eradicated is the correct word. Yeah, not evaporated.
Yeah, and I tell people, I'm like, listen, people are talking about the government. I said, go ahead and trust the government. Just ask the natives. Because what happened with the natives was that they did what they do to the veterans, right? They gave them everything. So they gave them subsidized land, they gave them subsidized healthcare, they gave them subsidized housing, and then they gave them alcohol, and then they killed themselves. Because that's the necessary component for a person to live, is a sense of purpose. Because otherwise, without that sense of purpose, it's a slow death. And, people can say, I don't know what you're talking about. I'm like, cool, wait till you're dying. There's 30,000 days that we have in an 82-year lifespan. Or 26,900 days in a 72 lifespan, which is the average American. And you have to think about how many days that you actually really have. The first, a couple thousand days, you're eating shit off the floor, you're getting bubble gum off the ground and chewing shit in your pants, you can't talk, you don't know anything. Then your adolescence, teen years, I wasn't a super productive teen.
Yeah.
And so then you think about what timeline do you really have in your life? And is the goal to collect a bunch of stuff? It's not going to matter. What's going to matter is a person's ability to realize what they are and who they are. And I believe you're not going to make it through this time if you don't recognize that. I think that the most important things in life are food, water, and shelter. And so we get those things, and then society says, you're not enough of a thing. So you think, okay, well, let me double my food, water, and shelter. Let me triple my food, water, and shelter. Now you have 1,000 times food, water, and shelter, and you feel ugly. You hate yourself. So you buy planes and you buy cars. You get all these things, right? But those are nothing more than just food, water, and shelter collection. Yeah, a plane and this, they're great. But that becomes the meaning of your life. And so there's no value, and that leads to destruction. So 98% of North America is fed by 2%. The rancher's dying. We've got 160 cows. We got 83 horses. There's a massive drought. We had to stop irrigating in July. 27% of rivers, lakes, and streams are not reaching the ocean anymore. They shut off all irrigation so that the Hoover Dam can keep running to all the farmers in that region. And so food, water, and shelter is really important because you can't eat a gold coin. You can't do it. And so, this Lakota medicine man that I've been spending a lot of time with, he was saying, because of the way that we have brought, he's like, when the Europeans came, he's like, we didn't know what sin was. Sin wasn't a thing. We didn't want to be famous. We didn't have alcohol. We didn't want to become the CEO of anything, right? We honored the land because that's what gives us life, the water and the tree. We have an ancestry with the trees. People can be like, oh, you're a tree hugger. And my message is come and get me. So you know what? But what the tree breathes out, we breathe in. What we breathe out, the tree breathes in. That's an important thing. And so how we have become such in a world where, we give awards to people, golden statues to people that are the best at pretending they're not themselves. You are absolutely the best at not being you. here's a golden statue. Matter of fact, we're going to call you a star.
People covet those things.
They covet those things. They covet them. And I'm thinking like food, water, and shelter is really like, to me, half the world starving. The other half's trying to lose weight. Like there's a sickness, and I see these sicknesses very profound with the veterans, because we, at the end of the day, they're not going to let you just wander off. Okay? We've put you in the program. You've done the program. We've rewired you to kill, right? To do these things. That's what the military is. Like, and I'm all for it, but I'm just saying, like, that's what it is. Then you get out after 10 years, right? And then there's a new program. And what's that program? Come on over here. Got some lithium and some Valium. We got some Vicodin. We got this. We got these things. We're going to put you on a caustic cocktail, right? And that's the new program. And we're going to give you money. We're going to pay you. Like, are you injured? Yeah, you're injured. Don't worry about it. Why? It takes your sense of purpose away. Are you going to really be out there like storming the gates? Like, no. You're in an entitlement system. And I see these guys, I'm like, dude, the free lunch is not free. It's not free.
Yeah.
It's a prison. And then 24 vets killed, 155,000 vets have killed themselves since 2005, every 64 minutes. So this podcast right now, somebody's blowing their brains out. There's 50,000 organizations out there. What's happening? Then you look back, you see the Native Americans, like, what do they do to them? It's a massive program. It takes time, right? And so for me, I'm like rounding up vets as much as I can. And I'm like, wake up. Wake up. Can you wake everybody up? No. Some of them will stay in perpetual slumber forever. And you know what? Have at it. It's your life to choose. I don't judge anybody for anything. I think judgment is it's just a wasted thought. You know, you spend your time worrying about everybody else. My thing is to look at how, you know, our generation of people that served and gave their life, what state are they in right now? And it's a state of complete total chaos. 2 in 6 vets are on at least 2 psychiatric medications. 2 in 6 that walk in the door. 4.5% of vets are attempting to get jobs and go to college and start businesses. 47% of World War II vets, where 496,000 guys were killed, 46% of them started business, are still operating today. FedEx, Comcast, right? So like, what happened? There was nothing in World War II for these guys when they came home, and that was the best thing ever. The best thing was like, I had to show up back at Dad's farm in Iowa and be like, oh, okay, I'm going to have to start the tractor and start working, because there is no, bicycling with, Brantley Gilbert and, shooting hoops with Michael Jordan or whatever. This stuff for vets, it's. I got invited to this horse program. They call me up. I'm running a horse program. And they're like, we want to invite you out to this horse program. I'm like, cool. They're like, is there any riding? And they're like, no, but there is petting.
Oh, it's like an equine therapy pitched course?
Yeah, and I'm like, first of all, I would have never even gotten married if my wife said to me, like, there's no riding, but there is petting. I'm like, wait a second, that doesn't work for me. Like, I don't want to just pet things. Like, but because this is the thing, is that everybody thinks we're broken, but actually, like, the definition of wisdom is remembering the experiences, not forgetting, but without the emotional charge. And that's how you gain wisdom and grow and become strong. So before you can get wisdom, they say, you're a victim. And the victim mindset's pretty easy to kind of fall into, because over there's, it's free money and I don't have to work. And then next thing, I talk to guys, I'm like, how in the hell are you on 9 meds? Well, it started with like kind of trouble sleeping. Like, I went in and I'm like, okay, stop. What were you doing to mitigate your sleep cycle? Nothing, right? Chugging Monster Energy drinks, drinking 1,000 cups of coffee a day, playing video games, doing nothing, turning into a disgusting person, eating pizza all day, and they got trouble sleeping. So what do? They medicate them. No lifestyle change. Lifestyle change continues, because now I would have to do the work to do that. Circadian rhythm, like, change my diet, do all this stuff. And so next thing you know, you got a 27-year-old guy on 9 meds. And it's like 75% of the 200 guys that apply a year are on at least one psychiatric med, which is altering their relationship to who they are.
Why do you think that some people go down that path in the veteran community and others seem to be able to escape it? Because it's one thing I think we should address is that there's a large component of the veteran community that doesn't rely on those things as well. They are able to off-ramp or exit and move on with their life.
I think it kind of comes down to who they talk to. I think that I think it's more than you think. I think I'm in a microcosm. Guys apply to the program that need help, right?
Yeah.
So I look and read their applications. I read every single application that comes through. We just get reached out to by so many people, and they're all in some level of being fucked up on something. I think it's profound, the amount of people that are on shit, and I think that it's easy to think that, like, it's easy to avoid the work. And I think that people are lazy generally. And so it's like, okay, well, I'm depressed. Okay, well, what am I going to do about it? So I can take a pill that was made by a company that's supposed to get me back to normal. Well, then what's normal? Who's determining that? How am I taking this to get me to the end state? Do we have a baseline of what the end state is? No, it's just a generality.
Or I would add to it also asking yourself, why are you depressed?
Right.
Is there something that maybe you're going through a fucking divorce where, maybe mood swings and ups and downs and valleys and peaks should be expected and not medicated their way through, but actually worked their way through.
I think, yeah, exactly. Well, that goes back to it. You have to do the work. Right? Yeah. So it's like, okay, if you really want to change your life, then get up off that couch right then. I tell people, they're like, oh, I'm fat because of like my genetics and this and that. I'm like, well, if you ate a carrot and walked from New York City to Montana, would you be fat anymore? Like, no. I'm like, that's a choice.
Well, it depends on what they ate along the way.
Just carrots, right?
There's a lot of restaurants between the two, so they could walk really slowly.
Yeah, really, from McDonald's to McDonald's. Eat pig nipple bacon sandwiches.
Yeah.
I think, to me, like, people, they don't, everything in the world and everything in life that has any value whatsoever to it involves struggle. And that includes in value in yourself. And so if struggle gives everything in life value, period, okay, oil, gas, diamonds, it doesn't matter. Whatever the struggle component directly related to that has a value associated with it. So if you want to move past situations and circumstances in your life that are giving you a hard time, get ready to struggle, because the struggle is what reveal who you are, right? It's not like, I want to learn about myself, so I'm going to lay here and eat ho-hos. I'm going to learn about myself. I'm going to climb Mount Everest. Okay. You're going to learn some things along the way, right? I mean,
and you could eat those ho-hos without probably a negative detriment while you're on the side of that hill.
I think that would cause you to be oxygen deprivation.
I'm just saying, calorically, you could probably get away with a few.
Hey, I'd get sponsored by ho-hos and prove it. I will climb Mount Everest on nothing but ho-hos.
But you go on that physical journey, it's like, you know what, you can have some of those rewards along the way.
Yeah. No, and listen, this is the thing, is that, like, the easy way kills you. Like, that's why we have obstacle course races, right? Like, you literally, like, that's such a ridiculous thing. They didn't have obstacle course races during, like, hunter-gatherer days. Life was an obstacle course race. But now you're at the, you're saying about the Xerox machine here with Steve, and you're like, I'm going over there, I'm doing the race. You climb over the log, some steroid guy whacks you in the head with a foam bat, they electrocute you, you jump in the mud, you pay to do this. And at the end, the next Monday, everyone's like, there's Bob, man. He's got a little glimmer in his eye. And he's like, he's just a little tougher, he's wearing, he's wearing Speed Cross 2s. Like, you're like, wait a second, is that Bob? He's like, yeah, I'm going for the beast next.
That's the new Bob.
That's the new Bob. Why? Because Bob struggled and found value. Why do you think we go to the treadmill? You enter in the struggle. this is how much we need struggle in our life. We literally have machines that manufacture fake struggle. So I go and I enter 30 minutes at 2% incline and get some fake struggle. And then on the way home, we all do it. I call up my close friend. I'm like, yeah, I just got off a 30 for 30. Like, yeah. Just like, we always just brag about the struggle we just had, because struggle gives every single thing in life value. If there is no struggle, it's not worth doing. Period.
The things I value in my life the most are the ones I've worked the hardest for. The things that mean the less, or the least, I should say, are those that were given to me.
This is a immutable law of life, and we have shied away from that, and it is destroying the human experience. It's death by easy. We're helping people to death. Nobody knows how to help themselves anymore. So we've done so much that we have helped people so much that it just kills them. And, I think it's time for a change. I think it's time to do something different. And that's why, I did a film with YETI some years back called 180 Out. And it was something that my father told me when I was a kid, which always stuck with me. Probably copied it from like Reader's Digest or something, but like, it was find out what the world is doing and then do the opposite. And that's where I find success. And I've always thought about that, because I always look at what the world's doing, and then I always think about what the opposite would be, and then I go and do that for the most part. And if you look at that way, your whole life changes in an instant. In an instant, you're like, I want to change my life. I'm like, right this second, do it. It's that easy, because you're living your own experience. The choices that you're making are creating the experience that you're currently feeling. And when you realize, I could do anything. Like, I could say, get up from here, get on my bike, and be like, call my wife, and be like, I'm climbing Mount Everest. I could just drive to an airport, take my credit card, go there, figure it out, and in a few months, I will be standing somewhere in that region, right? Sure, I'll be broke and sure, whatever. But, that's a lot of power. We have so much power that we don't even recognize it, because we're doing like the most low frequency behaviors, thinking that we're like traveling on this trajectory that's really going nowhere. What am I saving up for? To get a place in West Palm Beach so I can die with a diaper on, like get my ass beat and stroke? Like, really, like, what is the meaning of life? That's the question we should wake up and be asking ourselves every day. And that's the pursuit of the understanding of who we are. And struggle brings that out. Whether you're running the marathons, you're training, whatever the medium is, it doesn't really matter. It's the story of every living thing. Like, I saw all these trees in the Wind Rivers growing out at 12,000 feet, 11,000 feet out of the cracks of these rocks. And it just I took a bunch of pictures of them. It was crazy. Rough weather and the winds. It snowed on us up there. It was like pretty intense terrain. And I've been, across 18 wildernesses on a horse, and I'm like, this one really left a mark on me. It was so rugged and so, like, a lightning storm came. It was a very violent place, and you can only have a couple months you can go up there. Mm-hmm. And then here's all these trees growing out of the cracks of these rocks, their roots just going down, just like hanging on, struggling. And for me, life is meant to be like that. It's meant to be a struggle. Adversity is life. It's the story of us. And we've made life too easy, and I think that's why society's fallen into total chaos, because people have lost themselves. They're trapped in their intellect, or they're all based on the emotion. They're riding those horses of the apocalypse, and it's bringing chaos and pestilence and misery and fear in their lives. And they're terrified, because there's 1 in 1 chance that you don't get out of this story alive. You will die, period. And it could be tomorrow. You don't know. And people say, oh yeah, I know that. Like, everything happens for a reason. Like, and I hate when people say that to me. It's just like, but
when did you start thinking about life like this?
Well, I think, like, for me, when I started this organization,
were you thinking of life in these terms when you were serving in the military?
No, I was the military, like really, like kind of like, no, I was like a really into being, I'm the type of person, like I want to win, whatever it is. I don't know. I'm just like that. I was a little kid. I was like that.
Yeah.
And so I you know, I was very, I was super patriotic. You know, I wanted to basically just kill bad dudes. I really was.
Ride a bald eagle into fucking Kabul
Pretty much. And I was.
with a JDAM under each wing.
I was definitely the guy that, you know, and then when I went over, you know, to the other world, you know, where I met Evan, you know, in that world, I was still the same way. Like there's levels of guys that are willing to go, you know, down. And I was like, I was in that matrix at the time, but then there was some experiences that I was unfortunately to be involved in, that made me realize that a lot of things are, wow, this is a sham. This is wrong, and this is a sham. Like, and I started questioning things. So when I got out of that world and I came home, I was really struggling. Like, I was struggling hard because like my whole identity now was wrapped up in that. And what I had to learn to do was to let go of all experience identification. Because that really prevents a union with who you are as a person. So instead of working on yourself to achieve a knowledge of your highest self, you're just perpetuating an identity. And so the greatest thing that can destroy in your life can be a success or a failure, because they're one and the same if the byproduct is stopping growth in your life. So if all I ever do is perpetuate that, you know, it's Uncle Rico, right? Like, you know, went to state in 79, like, and that's all I do, that success has destroyed my life.
Yeah.
And if a trauma or a hardship or a divorce or, you know, losing friends or war, whatever it is, that moment right there is where your life stops. Then that's destroyed your life. So success and failure operate on the same plane. They both stifle growth. And so experience identification is very, very, very dangerous. Like, to me, like, I had to move through that, and it wasn't for a few years, and it was the horses and it was the mountains and it was all the hardships. You know, when I started it, I had these guys that were helping me out, these cowboys, and they were fucking the crookedest. Like, they were stealing money from vets, right? Like straight up. Like, I mean, I remember this guy had a website. He's like collecting money, and I'm like, you know, for vets, like he's just keeping it, right? Like, but anyway.
Oh, he just didn't even attempt to do anything with it. Just straight
no,
up kept it.
just kind of just straight up kept it. And it was like a .net website too, which was like the worst, you know. But like, all those experiences, you know, I was becoming the victim of life, and all life was doing, because the moment you start to say, like, I think that the world has to operate in perpetual balance, right? If you want to go down this rabbit hole, this is what I think. The world wouldn't operate if it was all good.
I agree.
Because there would be no choice. So you have to have free will, right? So free will to make a choice. So if it was all good, there's no contrast. So evil has to exist to provide contrast, to provide choice, to allow for free will. And so I think there's a perpetual balance. And so as a person, when we start to change and say, you know what? Wow, I'm like stuck in the analytical world. I'm riding the black horse of the intellect. Like I'm trying to think my way through life, which is only producing more thoughts and more thinking and more thoughts. And I'm trapped in this cycle, and I'm going to start doing things to change that. The moment you do that, out of nowhere, a shitty thing happens. Like, all of a sudden you're just like, you know, you come home and, like, you know, you're like, honey, no, God. Right? Like, you're like, guess what? Opportunity just arrived, right? Things are going to change. Maybe you weren't supposed to be with her, right? And now that you're starting to wake up and live outside that and begin to understand, you look at the Oracle of Delphi, 1400 BCE. What does it say? Know thyself. It actually says, know thyself, and you'll understand the universe and the gods within it. 1400 BCE. That's where Plato got it from. You know, he's like holding the Decahedron, and he's like, oh, know thyself. And everyone's like, oh, Plato. But like, Plato didn't get that from, he got it from the Oracle, right? Know thyself. And then we're like, we know our own thoughts. thoughts come and go. Ideas are a dime a dozen. Like, who are you? Well, I went to school and I went, like, who are you?
Yeah.
You can only find that if you go on the hero's journey, right? Which is like, and the moment you say, I'm going to do that, get ready for things to start falling apart, because you know what? They weren't supposed to be there in the first place. You adopted them with your thinking out of the analytical. So now all of a sudden there's this separation. You're like, why are all these things happening to me? They're happening because those things weren't ever supposed to be there in the first place. And I had a guy that came through who killed a lot of people. A lot.
Which is a meaningless metric, by the way, in my opinion.
No, like a lot. Like was a pilot and it hurt him.
The weight of that?
Yeah. because they're eating dinner, because they're having sex, because their kids are watching TV, because they're mowing, they're harvesting their vegetables, because,
Yeah.
And he's like, I've never been in a gunfight in my life, but the image is like, it's just there.
Yeah.
It's like,
I should clarify what I mean by saying
Yeah.
it's a meaningless metric. And I'm sure you saw this in the community that we came from. It's like a line in the sand that people want to rush to get across. And it's another way of identifying with something that's irrelevant, right? It's a fucking useless metric. However, it does have weight in gravity, which I think is what you're describing.
And I think the difference, like, and I thought a lot about it, because he kind of asked me some questions, and so, like, later on in the course, like, I just had this, like, feeling. And so he kind of said, he brought it up. We're riding on the horses and mountains, and he's like, it just it hurts, like, because the images are, like, seared in my head. And I'm like, not everybody, like, you could say, like, deserves it in that sense, And so he carried a lot of weight from that. And I said to him, how do you know they weren't supposed to die?
Relatively philosophical question.
Well, the thing is, like, we don't know the answers to those things. But if you look at history, you look at history, we don't know all the links in the chains of everything that's happening in the world. We play a role. We make the choices that lead us to the moments we're in right now. And I think to overanalyze those things and to realize, like, you're here in this moment for a reason. You were there in that moment for a reason, right? Like, the mind wants to try to solve those things, but when you realize that there's bigger things happening and you played a specific role, and why does the guy next to me, I had a experience that was super hard when I was augmenting you guys. The real story, like, kind of whatever, but, like, it was so close to me, but I never went down the survivor's guilt. I never did any of those things, because I realized, like, there's a reason for me to be here now, and I don't know the reasons for any other person's life. I have to solve those for myself. And so, we try to answer the questions to life's hardest answers and hardest situations and circumstances, and we can't do it with our mind. It doesn't work that way. You have to, like, learn to listen to your own voice, and that voice can be really muddled in a bunch of thoughts. And so if you're not creating that space to know yourself, then you will become the victim of all experience. And then life will keep throwing things at you, and hard things will come, and you'll keep solving problems with your head. But at the end of the day, you're never going to find meaning. And then when the lights get ready to go out, you're going to be fucking terrified, because you don't know anything. You don't know shit. So I kind of, like, I thought a lot about that at the time, and I'm like, you may say, like, you meet one guy and the best thing that ever happened to him was he lost his leg in Afghanistan. Why? He's doing CrossFit. He's like, he's a motivational speaker, like, whatever. Changed his life.
And I know people exactly like that.
Right. But then there's the other guy. And what's the other guy doing? He's got a needle in his arm.
Yeah.
Living in a trailer somewhere. What happened? People change two ways. People change through pressure, and they change through time. So it's either an extreme amount of pressure, like, an IED blast turns you from a solid to a gas over 30,000 feet per second, or a drop of water on a stone over 1,000 years. So, okay, I don't have 1,000 years, and I don't want to be converted into a gas. But pressure and time changes me. So what's that medium that's going to work for my life? And if you don't like your life and you're not happy where you are, it's because you don't know anything. Now, you may have some things, but you don't know anything. You just have a bunch of thoughts that you're thinking, and you're following some, arbitrary direction, azimuth that somebody gave you to think you're going to get to some end state that's going to make you happy. And along the way, you don't give two fucks about what really matters, because you're climbing the stairs. But when you get to the stairs, you're going to look down. The other side's going to be a drop off. And I just decided, in my life through this journey, that I was going to reject authority. I was not authority in the sense the police tell me to pull over and take off. Unless I'm on my bike.
That's some sovereign citizen shit right there.
Yeah. No, but that's later. No, but what I mean is the authority of societies and control, right? Because that's what drives you into chaos. It's the reason why you wake up in the morning. You're so worried about how you're perceived. You're looking in the mirror, you're putting your clothes on. Why? So that when you see the complete stranger, they're going to look and say, that guy's successful. That guy's an operator. That guy's a veteran. That lady's a whore. Whatever it is, you're just living subconsciously controlled by other people's and ideas and societies, and it drives you into chaos. And then at some point in your life, you're like, oh my God, what's the meaning of life? Then you're back looking to the dude with the robe on and the beads. So I just think you want to find grace and happiness in your life, then prepare yourself to suffer. And whatever the medium is, you have to find what works for you. And that will lead you to your authentic purpose. And then it's purpose that allows you to overcome your external circumstances. It's not pills. It's not freaking jobs. It's not money. It's not friends. It's not girls. None of those things, or dudes, or whatever you're into. It's the design of every single living thing. It's like that little tree finding its niche, reaching its roots down through solid rock in the most, negative 40 winters, 12,000 feet in Wyoming, and finding it and struggling. And as the struggle and as the wind comes, its roots go deeper. And it grabs onto more. There's not a lot there, not a lot of soil there, but then it grows strong and the weather becomes its ally and strengthening it. It's not its enemy anymore, it's its ally. But there's a short window for it. And I took all these pictures of all these little trees up there, and I just thought about it and I was like, wow, it's no different than our own lives. But what happened is just along the way, it got too easy. And then we started dying. And our roots got weak and they got soft. And next thing you know, the little wind comes and it's just a little whew, and you blow over. And instead of getting yourself back up, now there's every single institution in the world that's going to come in and going to help you. And my message is push their hands away and help yourself.
It's a powerful message.
Yeah, it's just, it's simple. It's a simple thing.
Not easy.
No.
Simple, not easy for sure.
Yeah, exactly.
How do you view your time in government service, both military and your post-military government service, now looking back on it? So two-part question. How do you view it while you were in, and how do you view it now? Because you've been out for what, about 10 years?
Yeah, so I got out in 2010. And
okay.
then I resigned from the agency contracting in 2015.
So what were your thoughts while you were in, and how do you look at it now?
When I was in, if I was to reflect back, and I was your quintessential American soldier. I grew up in a small town. I was fighting for freedom. Everybody that I really didn't care for the other side in any way. I couldn't even, I'd go home in upstate New York, or we'd go to the city and I'd see people there. I'd just want to choke them. I had a real disdain from them. To be honest with you, I was the type of person where I thought in my head, I could single-handedly win the entire war if you let me. Right?
Just unleash the beast. Let me handle this.
Yeah. I was and I saw it really wasn't about that at the end of the day. It wasn't about winning. Looking back, but then I was so into it. I was basically brainwashed, you could say. Like my whole life was eat, sleep, and drink that. And then I got really disenfranchised because I tried to screen after I was with Slab.
Yep.
And he reached out and they wouldn't let me go, and they sent me to trade out, and then I got out because I was really angry about it. So then I went into the reserves. I did 3 years in the reserves. And when I went over to the contracting world, that was a whole nother twisted world.
Why'd you decide to go down that path?
I met it at the time, like I needed money, and I got out. So when I got out of the teams, I soloed down the Amazon. I did 500 miles alone in a canoe. I went there. It was about 6 weeks I spent in the Amazon, and I always wanted to go there. I was kind of like, I was so angry at the military because I'm like,
because of how the end of your service went down?
Because I tried to, I wanted to level up. I just wanted to get out of there. I wanted to like level up, and I had all these great recommendations from a bunch of different guys that were like, and I never even got the chance because my master chief hated me, and partially because I told him to fuck off, and like, and he was like 5'4", and
and he's a gatekeeper though.
And he's a gatekeeper, and I had that kind of attitude, and I remember he came across the desk at me, and he was like, sending you to stand off weapons or this and that. I remember I looked right at him. I was like, fuck you. And he was like,
that's not going to go your way.
No.
In a rock, paper, rank organization,
no,
that's not going
But
your way.
like the thing is, it wasn't in the cards for me.
Yeah.
Because who knows, I maybe went and died. I don't know. It just wasn't in my cards. And so I tried so hard to make it in my cards, and then I show up in the reserves. I don't want to be in the reserves, but like I show up in the reserves to think that I'm going to go over there, and then I got, they said, well, you have to be in cell res for 2 years and this and that. And I'm like, I was so angry about that. So then I ended up going with the State Department, and I did one trip over there. I ran into a team guy who was a staffer over there, and got fired, of course, typical team guy. Had a good thing going, blew it. I won't say it, but he did some shady shit. But anyway, he like, shout out to the teams. So here's the golden egg, don't break it.
Oh, I already lost it. Can I have another one?
I gave it to a girl last night, but she said she's gonna give it back.
Yeah.
So he sees me, he's like, what are you doing over here? And I told him, and he was actually at my reserve unit, and he said, well, here, give me your information. So I go over there and I do that job for almost 4 years, and it was, that's when I started looking at government different.
Well, you got to see behind the curtain, and you realized it was a donkey with flies buzzing around its head.
It's a donkey with flies buzzing around its head. And then we lost some guys in an ordeal that I was involved in, and the way that it went down was insane. And it left a big mark on me. It was heavy. It was a heavy deal. And, some of us got some super high awards. But I was like disgusted after that. I was just like really disgusted because I started realizing I'm nothing to these people. I'm like just a cog. Like I'm basically a dog that to go and bite people. That's it. And then I started seeing how things were happening, and I'm being very vague, but like things with the people that like militaries like looking for the things that were happening. It was like two entities working against each other. It was very bizarre. And I'm like, we got guys dying out there, soldiers looking for people, and and it just wasn't good. And so, and then what happened was I needed like a little more time home after this ordeal happened, and a bunch of us did. And I was like, hey, I'm gonna like take a couple of weeks home, and they were like, if you don't, we need you to come back like right now, and if you don't, we'll dock your pay. And I remember I was like, fuck you. I quit. So then in 2017, I got reached out to and then flown down there, and there was a big ordeal, and some of us got some things. And I remember I went in there, and the head of the old department was there. I was wearing a pair of Vans. I pictured my wife there. They took her on a huge tour of all these things or whatever. And And one of the ladies came up to me and called me by my call sign. And she's like, nice to see that you decided to get dressed up for the occasion.
Was your call sign Dick Broom?
No.
Damn it.
No. It was microplastic dick. I'd been eating cellophane at that point.
Yeah.
But no. And I was like, and I remember the way that she said it, like, here
Just
I
full
am.
condescending.
Yeah, I mean, like, all the heavy hitters were there, like NSA, DIA, everybody was there, and it was like a very important thing. And I'm like, you know, one of a few guys, like, getting like this thing, and she came over and just berated me, like I was like a piece of shit, you know, like, and I was like, I don't fucking work for you no more. I remember, like, went and sat down, and I was just like, I realized how down you really looked upon. And I thought about all my friends and all the sacrifice and all the people and all the years and all the things. And I'm thinking, like, here Afghanistan falls, right? In like 24 hours, which means it's planned, right? Like, everybody throws down their weapons, throws down everything. The country just, you know, the Chinese sign a lithium ion deal over there for $3 trillion. Like, you know, it's like, you sit back and you think, like, in 2001, in September 11th, the anniversary tomorrow, what did I believe as a person at that time? Whew. Yeah, completely different. So, well, I wish my life any other way? Absolutely not. Zero. I think wishing that your life was any other way is the stupidest thing you could ever do in your whole life, so don't waste your time with it. Am I thankful for all those experiences? Absolutely, because they helped me become who I am today. Do I think that I would ever work for the government again? No, I don't think so.
I find that once people work for the government and get a look behind the veil, if you will, they oftentimes there's two paths: full baptism and full get the fuck out of here with I wouldn't touch that chick with somebody else's dick.
Yeah.
Type mentality.
That's how I feel, because I look and I'm like, you know, governments have led us into all manners. The United States waged war last year. USA article called "The Cost of War" that came out in 88 countries, right? 88 countries around the world. Mind you, you know, our infrastructure is crumbling. You know, you've got huge drug crisis in this country, homelessness, food shortage, drought. You know, we're in risk of losing the Hoover Dam right now because there's no water. Lake Mead's down 300 feet. You have all these things going on, right? But mind you, we're like all over the place doing things like, you know, we could have, there's just so many things that could have been done. Like, you know, we could have just went in and like vaporized the enemy and left, right? Like, but we get wrapped up into these huge things, and then they need people to go and execute them, because what are we going to do? Send in like Nancy Pelosi? You know,
It would be sweet if we did.
She's
Just for like 5 minutes.
How? Like, think about like the war leaders of like the old days, right? Where it's like Leonidas, right? Like, could you imagine if they're like, brothers, follow Nancy? I'd be like, I'm taking off this kilt. I'm not doing this, right? Like Nancy, like, you know, but like these are the leaders.
But imagine if they were forced to lead.
Yeah.
I think it might change some shit.
I think that people don't realize how powerful they are, because just like I was talking about, you can create your own life. You're living your own experience. This is an innate, insane power. Like, hey, I want to go to the moon. Okay, well, I'm going to come over here and start messing with these chemicals. Oh, cool, plutonium reactor, satellite, Hubble telescope, right? It all just came from people creating. We are creators. This table, these chairs, this microphone, frequencies, cell phones, like, it was made. It was made by people. So, like, start creating a different life by believing in a different life and then using your willpower to do those things. Well, these people, I'm like looking at them, I'm thinking, I'm not gonna. If I had a problem in my life, the last person I'm gonna dial is someone in government. I'm not gonna be like, oh God, this shit's going to my wife, like this guy, like my house, mortgage, like oh God, like Joe Biden, what do you think, right? I mean, they can't even balance a budget. I would call somebody close, but like, how do these people become the leaders? And I'm not even talking about politics. I don't give a shit about politics, because they're wings of the same exact bird. The illusion is that they're different when they're the same. And, you know, in 2008, you see like 2005, the Protect America Act that came out, right? And everybody's talking about all of a sudden, like, you know, national security. And everyone's thinking national security. No, national security means state security. It's to protect the government. It has nothing to do with people. They don't care about public safety. It's all an illusion. And so, in my opinion, like,
well, you can see it behind the scenes because what they ended up doing under the guise of that was stripping freedoms incrementally from the citizens.
And then
under the guise of national protection.
Let me ask you a question. I know everything that went on, and I know I have a lot of friends that, you know, all this stuff went on with rescuing the, you know, the guys over in Afghanistan and everybody all the vets going over there and going to Afghanistan, right? And I have, this is my thought on that, and I would be curious to hear yours. But like, if the roles were reversed and we're in North America, and America gets invaded, right? And there's a, you know, I don't know, 15-year conflict that happens here, and it's going to be overrun. It's kind of a lost cause. So let's just say England starts flying in airplanes, evacuate people. Are you on the plane?
No.
Me neither. I mean, I told my wife, I'm looking at her and I said, you want to get in the plane? Love you guys. But I'm fucking dying here.
Yep.
I am not leaving my land. Like, where I am, this soil. Like, I'm not going anywhere. People don't have that level of commitment for our nation anymore. They're willing to go over and fight and die for complete and total strangers. Where, mind you, our country is collapsing. And people say, oh no, the fires are here. They're burning right now, right? The chaos is already forming. 38 people were killed in riots last year in North America. More people than were killed in Afghanistan were killed here on the streets. Food shortage coming. Water basin shutting down. Kalamouth shut down. Hoover Dam. They had to, you know, cut off all the irrigation to the farmers and send it to Phoenix. Like, all these things are happening, but nobody wants to fight for this country. But we'll get on a plane and we'll go over, and I'm not advocating like whatever, but like, I'm just saying, like, I don't understand it. And then like, we think like we have the answers, and if you live like us, that your life will be better. You know, you're taking people from the Stone Age. 97% of people in Afghanistan did not know what 9/11 was, right?
I was on target where the question would be asked, where is Osama bin Laden? And their response was, who the fuck is Osama bin Laden?
You're like Bumblebee Tuna?
Your balls are showing.
Are those silicone in your balls?
No, yeah. You know, when they were upping the monetary, I want to say prize, but that's not it, value of bin Laden to like 50 million. Yeah. And they would...
what are dollars?
Well, no, I was reading an article one time. They talked to an Afghani farmer. Like, what would you do with $50 million? And the guy's like, I would buy another goat. Oh. Because he had one. Yeah. He's like, I just doubled my shit. He doesn't know what the fuck $50 million is. It's a very skewed perspective. Yeah.
I mean, and like, why... You have the people in Panjshir, that region, that are like, we're not going to comply. No one's ever conquered us. We're going to stand our ground or whatever. But like, I think that like, if you run and you flee your country, you know, in my opinion, I just would never do that. So, you know, you got to stand and fight and die for what you believe in. Like, I think that's like what we should do as soldiers, you know. And
I agree with that headspace. And I think that's just who I am as a person, but I don't think that is the norm. I would say that that's probably the anomaly.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I don't understand. I like, meanwhile, like the
and I don't know if that is because of the background that we have, or did we come out of the box that way? I don't have the answer for that. Because I honestly feel like my answer, like if you would have asked me that question, would you get on the planes before I had joined the military? I think my answer would have still been the same.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, so it's again, why that is, I don't know. Why is it the anomaly? I don't know. Maybe you and I are wired slightly differently than, I don't want to say the average person, but most people.
Yeah, I don't think people think like, I think right now is that people are not thinking really deeply about life anymore. It's a superficial life, where your whole life is about perpetuating identities on social and this and that, getting money, getting in the right crew, getting rid of the right people, getting in with the right stuff, getting in with the right brands, your whole life is that people are not thinking deeply about life. So this machine just like chugs on, and you're an unwitting, you're an unwitting passenger that's just sitting there. And you think, somebody said the other day, it's like, well, these, we're bringing them over here so that they can have freedom. And I was like, okay, but like, what's freedom? Why does there even have to be a word freedom? Why isn't there just free? Freedom means that it's afforded to you by somebody else. But the word free just is. So like, the question is like, who's in charge of the dignity of the human experience? Who's in charge of that? Why are you in charge of my experience of what I can eat and where I can go? And so I work 70 hours and you take 28% of that every week and then do whatever you want with it. And against my own will, right? Like you tell me what foods and what's acceptable to say and what I can watch, and you have programs and channels, and like, wait a second, like what's freedom? Freedom is letting you live inside and operate within this little box, right? Like people are like, well, where's free then? I'm like, Mexico. Because you could just like pay people off. like, I'm down there like speeding like during the Baja. I was with Clint when I was the helicopter medic down there, and when he won the Baja 1000, and we're down there, Chris, of like speeding, like cop pulls me over, is like doing like, I don't know, like 120 or something. And I was like, take out like a $10 bill. He's like,
Buenos dias.
Yeah, Buenos dias. And he goes back and like eating ice cream cone. I'm like, this is the best place ever.
Yeah, I wonder if we have a different appreciation for it because in our own line of work, we were confronted with our own mortality much more often, at least conceptually, I think, than the average person ever is. I think a lot of people actually try to avoid any confrontation with their mortality.
Yeah, I think the fear of death is it's a stupid thing. In my opinion.
I mean, it's probably a good governor for some people's behavior.
Well, I mean, yeah, especially like people that like, fly Birdman suits and do those kind of things, right? Like,
my litmus test was, though, if I'm ever not scared standing on the edge, I need to stop doing this because I'm no longer paying attention or I've completely smoked out my adrenal gland.
Yeah.
Both are bad options.
Yeah. But I don't mean like in terms of like taking like risk, right? But like this arbitrary fear, like, okay, everybody's so focused on living longer right now, okay? All these people, you got this doctor, they're on there and they're like, okay, now we've got this like calculation. You eat like one little piece of tuna and then like take this seaweed and do this. And like, so your whole life becomes about trying to live longer when you're going to die at the same time anyway, right? So it's like your life becomes, your creation, because we're creators, becomes trying to live longer, and that's your life. Trying to live longer is not a purpose. Living is a purpose because you're living your purpose, but trying to live longer. So you create this whole thing. So people are injecting themselves, they're changing their hormones, they're getting their faces reconstructed, they're putting, seashells in their ass cheeks or whatever these things that they're doing right now. It's like the king, Michael Jackson, right? Like, I mean, you look at these people and what are they trying to do? They're all trying to avoid death. So their life becomes death avoidance, which is impossible, right? Impossible. So like make peace with that, because when you realize, I believe in a mind before matter universe, not a matter before mind universe. But I think that like when you realize that this is just a proving ground to learn the laws of the fraternity, and if you live that analytical, black horse, or you're trapped on the white, the pale horse, or you're trapped on the red horse, or whatever the horse you're riding is, you'll never learn anything. You'll never know anything. And so when death comes, you'll be afraid because you don't know what happens next, which is the greatest adventure. Right?
My goal is to get to the finish line on this lap in just the most fucked up, beat up, spent out vehicle, like barely, it's just like coughing and wheezing to get there. But
like a team guy, Stephen Hawkins, just like a fucking
just
straw, just like
burned, missing a few fingers, every experience known to man.
Typing with your nose, just.
And then people are like, how can you live like that? It's like, no. Let me tell you the things that I did to arrive at being like this.
Yeah. And at the end, to be able to share what you learned.
Or what's the opposite? Try to nurse it 2 more years and live your life in a rubber padded room eating Jell-O and experiencing nothing. Fuck that.
Listen, I started reading Ben Greenfield's book, Boundless.
Yep.
Which is a huge book. And now I just carry it around so people think I'm smart. But, I'm just everything I'm ever doing. I'm riding my motorcycle. I got that book, and people are like, "Man, that guy's smart. He's got that book."
You should put it up like at the bars and just like slowly freak people the fuck out.
Just freak people the fuck. It's so big, I'd have to have 2 seats.
Yeah.
But so I because we have all these modalities. We do the Wim Hof, we do the breathing. Every guy does these. They do the cold plunges every day at 5 o'clock in the morning. It's 35 degrees out. Like all these modalities we've added. The nutrition, they're on a supplement regimen. While they're going through the program, and so. I always kind of figure out what's the latest kind of biohacking type stuff, which really is just escaping from bad habits that we've developed. And I was like, man, like, shout out to Ben Greenfield, awesome dude. Like, but his whole life, he's like wearing like infrared goggles to bed with like flippers on and electrodes, and he's got like things attached to his dick. He's like testing his. I'm like, man, I'll die a couple years earlier.
I can respect the enthusiasm. Not my cup of tea.
No, man. It's like I'm not going to sleep with like a chem light in my ass and a freaking electrode in my ear. Like, why? Because I'll live 3 days longer. Like,
whoo, yeah, no fucking thank you.
But people are obsessed because they're terrified of dying. It's this fear of dying. Like, you think about it's the self-driving cars. We want to save more people. We want to do this. Mind you, cigarettes are fine. 42% of Americans are obesity, but we want to save you with the self-driving cars. Yeah. We don't want to save anybody, right? we really we want to exterminate populations, So it's like the way that we do it is with food. You see these people like. One of the guys that came through, he's 30 years Special Forces guy, awesome guy. He's like, yeah, man, I'll never forget it. They opened a Golden Corral down in Fort Bragg. And he's like, we'd go there on Sunday with some of the squadron or some of the ODA guys. And he's like, yeah, there's a family there. And they'd show up, the whole family would show up, take a huge table, roller bags and everything, just a bunch of fucking whales. And he said that they, so he said they would come in at 8. And then they would eat every meal until dinner. So they wouldn't leave because you don't have to pay. You don't have to pay again. So they would just graze.
That's a fine Sunday.
It's just graze. And he said every Sunday you'd go in there and they'd be there breakfast, lunch, and dinner. They'd pay the $8 once for breakfast. And they wouldn't get up. And they would just stay there. And I'm like thinking, meanwhile in Ethiopia.
Yeah, no shit, right?
These sticks are delicious.
We are a society of excess for sure.
Yeah, I heard Bill Burr. He told us he had this hilarious segment, and he's like, yeah, I don't really know why we can't make fun of fat people. He's like, you're not a race, you're not a religion, you're not a gender. You did it to yourself. You ate your way in. You can walk your way out. And
Bill Burr is fucking hilarious.
Bill Burr's hilarious, but you know what? He's absolutely true. I tell guys, I'm like, they come here. I'm like, listen. They lose 30 or 40 pounds. That is a life-changing experience on their joints, on their knees. They're changing.
Just go pick up a 45-pound plate or a 35-pound dumbbell. You don't realize how much it is until you just cold pick it up. Like, oh my God, I was carrying that around on me.
And the thing is that people, it's an addiction. Sugar. When I see guys coming off sugar,
by design.
We had a guy, he's like, I drink two liters of Coke every day, 7 days a week.
It's powerful.
I'm like,
his insides are probably fucking shiny.
Yeah.
It's like, God, that stuff eats pennies.
It does. But the thing is, they're using coca leaves. Okay? Coke. It's fine for them. It's fine for the public. have another. You know, remember when everything went down? Like, I think the war, I forget what it was. Something was happening. George Bush goes, I'd have to look it up exactly. It was something terrible had happened. There was an attack or something. It was during the wars. And he said, listen, everybody needs to just, go shopping. You remember that? He said that.
Oh, God damn it. Yeah, what was that?
Something was going on. He said something about going shopping.
Everybody needs to go out and go shopping.
Go shopping. Thanks for your inspiration. Like, consumerism, and like sugar is an insane addiction. It's insane. And I think like human beings they've lost the ability to discipline themselves, and they're being controlled by their own physiology, where it's like you don't even like feel, you just go from like one meal to the next, and I personally believe, like, I'll go on record here on the podcast, but there's a food shortage coming. I mean, I'm in the ag world. I got cows, horses, like.
How far out are we?
We got a ranch. So like my buddy's a farmer. He has a 100,000 acre ranch, and he's like, we were talking, having a couple of beers, and.
Well, you live out near we'll call it Bozeman-ish area, right?
So we're an hour from Bozeman.
Okay.
But yeah, we're in the Ruby Valley.
Don't tell people exactly where.
Yeah.
All right.
Don't
You might get some people that show up at the one where your skin like a leotard. Okay? So, like, you live in Bozeman, as far as everybody needs to know.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, go to Bozeman and then stay there.
Yeah.
Or don't come to Montana at all. But yeah, I mean, I saw my buddy's got a place down in Wyoming. We were talking. He's like, without NPK on this soil, I cannot grow anything.
What is NPK?
So it's nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium. And so it comes from China. It's where it comes from. We get it delivered, and it's sprayed on the soil as a fertilizer.
Because the soil is just nutrient.
It's
gone.
Taxed.
Yeah.
Right? So he's like, some people say 60. I'm calling it 50 as a farmer. He's like, cycles left of growing, and that's it. I can't do anything else. Like, it won't, it will be so dead, it'll just be a dust bowl.
And is this cycle generally a year? Or do they get multiples per year?
They get multiple per year. So
probably depending on the crop.
Shorter,
yeah.
and so you see, like, like I said, 27% of all rivers, lakes, and streams are not reaching the ocean anymore because of irrigation and subdivisions and cereal grain production. And so, like, you look at the beef industry, and we're going to be starting our own beef company. And so we have 160 cows, and the average piece of beef in North America travels 2,200 miles, right? So it's born in Montana. It's raised, till October, born in March or so, because it's all based on commodities. Like, why are we calving in the wintertime? Okay, the cow drops out. Cows are not indigenous in North America. They do terrible in the winters here. So cow drops out, and basically if you're not right there with a side-by-side, and it's negative 30, freezes to the ground and dies. I mean, so you're racing around constantly during calving. It's horrible. So then you feed these things, and in October they're 500 to 600 pounds. So then they're sold in the commodities. So it's kind of a general weight and a futures weight. Then they're put on these semis, and then they're hauled to Nebraska, Oklahoma, Kansas, and they're put on a feedlot, and they're fed cereal grains. So corn, barley. If it's like not a good place, they feed them all kinds of other terrible shit. So then the cow's raised till he's like 1,300, 1,400 pounds. They're not allowed to really move around.
And that's the only goal, right, is to get that weight.
Get the weight up.
And that's why they feed them that food, people. Pay attention to that.
That's
the fastest way to fatten them.
Fastest way to fatten them. They pump them full of this stuff. So then the cow is taken to a slaughter plant. So they're taken there to slaughter. Then they're taken to a distribution center. Or they're taken to a packing plant. Then they're taken to a distribution center. And then from the distribution center, they're sent to your local store, and then you drive it home. Or it returns back to Montana, right? So it's just moved around constantly and comes back. Well, think about fuel prices, water prices. So what does it take? It takes 4,200 gallons per 1 pound of beef.
Really?
Yeah.
Holy shit.
So that's how much water it takes for these animals. Because of all the production involved, right? So the idea is like communities, like I think that grass is like one of the stupidest things on the planet. Like, why do you have grass? You could take your lawn and just make it into you could have enough vegetables to last your family an entire year and grow in your little 1/4-acre lot in your backyard. But, we want Bob over there, He's over there working at IBM. He's got the new zero turn. So you can drive around, use fuel, and chop up your freaking grass so that, the neighbors can look good, and you can just hang out by the Home Depot for the next bigger model to come out. So you're basically just doing 360s. And I'm like, man, if the whole country would change if people just said, hey, fuck grass. Like, I'm going to turn this thing into a producing little garden. That's it. It's so easy, right? But nobody wants to take ownership of anything. And so you see beef prices are tanking right now. Hay prices went from $90 last year to $400 in the state of Montana. So
damn.
So we just got hay. We got hay and we paid $300 a ton for it when last year we paid $90, right? So now you're making the decision, do I just get rid of all livestock? Do I feed them and go bankrupt? Like, what do I do right now? So now everybody's like jamming hard because what are you going to do come the wintertime? People don't realize that. Some in Wyoming, small squares of hay are $540 a ton. Okay. You're talking that they were like $5 a bale a year ago. So then how do you feed these animals?
Yeah.
You can't. You cannot afford to feed them unless you have big ranch. We've got 3,500 acres. And, we've got some land leases, 4,000 acres or whatever. But still, you're talking about hard winter. You're talking about constant rotating. We're always on horseback. We're always moving them. We're always, constantly trying to use every, square inch of the land. But, come late January, you're going to have to feed them. And they won't be able to sustain it out there in that weather. So then now you're like, what do you do? And we're going to see that coming. So my projection is 3 to 5 years. I think you're going to really see... you're going to see really high food prices, and the food's going to be coming out of Mexico. They shut off the Kalamoth water basin in California this year. 300,000 acres did not get irrigated, so there's no food coming out of there. They just shut off that dam, and I'm feeling it as a rancher.
Yeah.
I've never really thought about that a lot in my life until I started doing this, and now that we have a working operational ranch, I'm like, this system has to change. It's not vertically integrated, and you have people that live in these huge cities. They produce nothing, right? So they get in they live in a box. They type in their little 011010101 at their job. They go down to the store. They take, turn the lights on, flush the toilets, use electricity, go down, take. But nothing goes back into the system. So, now you have hundreds of millions of people that contribute nothing. It's all based on commerce. And they're getting to the place where it's exhausting the agricultural capacity of the country, so we're feeling it, especially as a nonprofit, where it's like, man, I can't afford to buy $400 hay,
yeah.
So you're selling horses and moving cows around and trying to get creative, so it's a scary time when it comes to food. And I think people should be thinking about it.
How'd you, speaking of the nonprofit, where did the idea for Heroes and Horses come from?
Just my life. People like...
Did you grow up on horse?
No, I grew up working on a dairy farm.
That's what I'm saying. I was curious where what you're doing is, it sounds like it's very, I don't want to say complex, but it's all-encompassing, and I'm just curious where you got exposure to it.
Yeah, it's like, I call it the threefold world. So it's the mind, body, and spirit, over a medium of pressure and time, 41 days. And so it covers every single aspect of that. And how I actually got into it was when I was still contracting. We moved out here to Montana.
Good call, by the way.
Yeah. 2013, we moved out here. And
Fucker, you beat me by a couple of years.
I did.
It's fine.
Yeah.
Second place is first loser. It's no big deal.
I'm your senior. So
just about everybody is, so it's fine.
So we we moved out here, and I went on a hiking trip with my daughter, and I met those crooks and charlatans out there in the backcountry.
Oh, the vet crooks and charlatans taking the money from?
Yeah. So basically what happens is I meet these guys, and I'm in this random spot, a high altitude lake. I found them out. Never been in the backcountry in Montana. 2013, I hiked back there. I take my daughter with me. We do 3 days back there, and I see these guys out at this lake. We're at 10,000 feet. It's a spot that you can really only get to a couple months out of the year, and they're wearing the shemags, and I'm like, oh God, no. Vets, right?
Just think Charlie Sheen's neckerchief in the movie Navy SEALs.
Yeah. They're wearing schmacks, right? Yeah. So I'm like, so the guy, like, one of the guys sees me, I'm like tatted up, and like, you know, like he comes over and starts talking to me, and he's like, oh, there's a bunch of vets, and there's a team guy that I know. And, well, I knew of him.
Yeah, you heard the name at least.
Yeah, he's Master Chief, and like, so he's out there, and they're on like a 5-day, I don't know, men's thing or whatever with the horses. So I get talking to him, and I said, oh, I live here, and the guy invites me down there. So he ends up like teaching me how to shoe horses. So I'm a farrier, and been shoeing horses for like 7 years. And I wouldn't suggest that as a job, but
strong grip though.
Yeah, I can whack them and tack them now. But like, so like originally, like they had like a shoeing table where they tipped the horses over sideways, and and my job was to run the Makita grinder, right? So like, you know, I grow up, do anything, drive skid steers, you name it, excavators. I've done it all, septic systems, like roofing, like kind of a jack of all trades in that sense. And so, easy day, I start doing that. We start doing colts or whatever, and this guy tells me like, you know, he you know, he's taking vets on, you know, he took these vets on a trip, but it was a one-time thing. Well, I ended up like finding out, like the guy's got this like website up, right? So he's collecting like donations, right? He's collecting trailers, he's connecting all this stuff. He's completely bankrupt, okay? Loses the ranch, so he's tied in with this other crook, right? Who's like a total drunk or whatever. And now I'm getting on bucking horses, I'm getting smashed, dragged. I'm so smashed up from horses like at this time. And they loved it. They're just cowboys. And they're like, come on, you're a Navy SEAL. Like, get on that thing. And of course, you know, ego at the time, you know, I'm like, I'll do it, but I'm scared, but I'll do it. Like, and listen, I don't care. You can put people, they can do anything. Jump out of airplanes, do all that stuff. You put them on a horse.
Oh, fuck no.
It's a different kind of fear because now there's another thing involved that has its own ideas.
Oh,
right?
yeah.
So, like, you're going to find out. Like, and when I rode horses, did a film, rode horses, 16 wild Mustangs I took from New Mexico to Arizona. And you want to talk about like fear factor. Like I was like scarier than like some of the scariest experiences of my life on those things where like you think they're going to throw you off a cliff, you know, like things are going sideways, that you're not in control at certain times. And so, you know, here I am, I got angry. I hated these horses. I hated them shoeing. Now I'm shoeing horses. I can barely sit on them. These guys are putting me in all these experiences. So I ended up bringing some buddies out, team guy and another Green Beret buddy of mine who was very dark, hadn't come out of his house in 6 months. And we went out and we packed in the mountains and all this stuff. And I ended up like starting, you know, the organization, which was come out for 2 weeks, go home, come out for 2 weeks. And then, you know, and I was still on my own journey at the time. And so then the next year I had a guy do it, come out, and then he went home after 2 weeks and OD'd and died. So that's why the program was 41 days today. And so I ended up breaking contact with those dudes. It was like, yeah, I remember the last words I ever said to the guy. I said, if I ever see you again, I'll knock your teeth out. And that was the last time I ever saw him. And
probably for the best for
his
his dental work.
For his dental work. Yeah. Well, he had rough teeth anyway, big Copenhagen guy. You know? So what you have for breakfast? Nickels?
Yeah.
Yeah.
God.
But he, yeah. So then, you know, the program's just evolved as my personal life has evolved. And so whenever something changes my life or affects my life, I add it to the program. And people are like, well, who taught you? And I'm like, why do we always think we have to get ideas from other people? If you get really quiet and you learn to listen, what you need to know for your life appears out of the nothingness. And that's ultimately why, like, when that guy died, that was the catalyst to do 41 days. And, you know, as I did the Sweat Lodge, I added that. And then, you know, they got to read the 2 books. And then the Wim Hof, so cold therapy has been like a big part of my life.
What are the 2 books you have them read?
They have to read Man's Search for Meaning and The Obstacle is the Way, which is a Ryan Holiday book that we use. And it's just like a bunch of stories about people that, like, it's based on Marcus Aurelius's meditations.
Okay.
And so then we have a course they do every night. And then they, you know, they got a journal every day, and it's just one long conversation in who am I as a person. And you ride that horses that much, and that under that, we're not doing it for them. They're doing everything. They learn how to shoe, they learn how to blacksmith, they learn how to forage, they learn how to cold start, they learn trucks, trailers, chainsaws, like, I mean, riding, loping, roping out of the box, like team roping, stockmanship. Like, we went to a ranch that was 1 million acres this year, and worked there in Nevada. So they learn all those things. And what it really is just a high pressure medium that shifts focus from a person that is addicted to looking to be told what to do and what normal looks like for their life to finding it on their own. And whatever that is, will then go and be that. That's not for me to determine. I'm not here to determine people's lives or determine what is right and wrong for them. They have to walk that own path. I'm just setting up a scenario where they're going to find it, and that's it. That's what I do. I set up a scenario, and I'll continue to grow that. And I think, my ultimate goal is to get some policy change where, there needs to be a wellness option associated with the VA. So when a veteran shows up at the Veterans Administration, the first person that they don't see is a 25-year-old grad student that was funneling beer bonks the night before and is sitting there that says, oh, trouble sleeping? Like, okay, here's this and this. Why don't you say, hey, look, here's an 8-week program that focuses on, you get all the top brains in the world, you get all the innovators, you get all the thinkers, you get all the people together, and you create these modalities that change people's lives. And then you say, hey, there's 150 programs right here for you to choose from. It's going to be hard. You're going to lose weight. You're going to sacrifice. You're going to self-actualize yourself. You're going to go through all this stuff, but at the end, it's going to change your life. Or you can come over here and Betty has a bunch of chemicals, made in a lab far away that are going to get you back to normal. A or B, red pill, blue pill. That's it. You give the individual the choice. Knowing veterans, when they walk in there, a lot of them are going to choose the hard way.
Yeah.
They're going to want to take the challenge. But the thing is, there's no challenge ever presented to them. The only thing that's presented to them is the easy way. And so I spoke to some members. I got to speak on Capitol Hill 2 years ago to some members. And the lady from the Veterans Administration in Congressman's office said, well, it's a liability that we give them meds right away so that they don't kill themselves. And I'm like, they already are killing themselves.
The meds are not going to be curbing that problem.
No. So why don't we give them the option and create a wellness arm, start demanding that, and I'm like, that's how you get real change right there, because the VA is not going away. It's there, but we can improve and say, hey, look, there's all kinds of things, modalities that are changing people. So let's put them together. Let's identify organizations, elevate them. We don't need 50,000 nonprofits, where you're taking vets out in miniature ponies with sneakers on around Bozeman to build confidence.
Please tell me you're joking about
No. You got dudes walking around with miniature ponies on leashes. Okay.
I mean, that part I'm on board with. It's just, what are they trying to get out of it? I would like a miniature pony.
I mean,
With
I have a miniature
sweet
pony.
set of Nikes.
Yeah, I know. Air Jordans, Air Hordens.
I mean, don't threaten me with a good time. I'll walk a fucking miniature pony. I'll walk that shit right to the grocery store. I'll take my daughter to school with that thing.
Okay, so what happens Monday morning when you get back and you don't have your pony?
Shit falls apart.
Yeah. Enter razor blades, right? Because you're ashamed that you've done that, So, I mean, we have to think about we have to think about reintegrating, people, and the way that that's going to last and be authentic and meaningful is by putting them in situations where they learn about who they are, not what they've done. And then the experiences that you've had, the memories, the bad, the blood, the bombs, the this, the that, they're still there. They're a part of you.
Yep.
But the idea is there's no emotional charge associated with it. And you look back and you draw from that well of experience, and they become building blocks of growth in your life. But you got to do the work. You have to do the work. You have to do. At the end of the day, none of this shit matters if you don't wake up and do it. Period.
I imagine you're seeing some pretty extreme changes from people day 1 to day 41. What kind of stuff are you seeing?
I mean, whole entire personality changes. I mean, it's hard for me because I have to be a mentor and I have to be balanced, and it's a lot to deal with sometimes. It's very challenging because you see people going through change, and change is difficult, right? It's almost like, you watch that Biggest Loser where the person's their whole workout goal is to move their pinky back and forth, and they just build on that. I mean, that's what it really is.
Yeah.
And it's you just start to promote. It's like a horse, when I'm breaking a horse, particularly a wild Mustang. And, I've been fortunate now to have, started, broke, and trained a lot of wild Mustangs. I think 33 of we have 78 horses now. 33 of them are wild horses. And so I've been breaking horses for a long time now. And in the beginning, it was all about me and like how I looked, and I didn't really care about my relationship with the horse, and I missed all the changes along the way because I was looking for huge changes. But now it's like I look for the littlest change, and then I promote that, so it's really just making the good thing easy and the bad thing hard. And I promote those little tiny changes is the same way in people where, the horse, it's the blinking, it's the kind of just softening his rib cage and like kind of turning the hip away from me. Like, I'm not going to kick you. I'm not going to be in that defensive position. Like getting him to face their fears, right? And a lot of people have a lot of regret because of things they did or things they didn't do. They have all these propensities, but like if you start to see that change and you promote that change, really soft with a lot of feel, and you promote that change, then they begin to think that they're the ones doing it. And then they begin to adopt that, and then they begin to hunt for what's right. And so initially guys show up, they're wearing the military clothes, they're all this, and they're telling the stories, and it's just like, and then eventually that just wears off. And it becomes very difficult. They're physically very tired, right? Which makes somebody more apt to be trained and more open to things, right? They're meditating, they're doing breath work. Every day they're facing the cold. 5 o'clock in the morning in June, it's 38 degrees out, and they're getting in the cold. They're facing by choice an obstacle. They're facing their fears, so teaching them to face their fears and promoting those very changes, until probably around halfway when all this, they're cleaned out and their system's cleaned out, they start to look for what's right because that change feels correct to them. And so, that's all my role is to set up the scenario and promote those micro changes, and then building upon each one of those micro changes and never missing even the smallest change. Because, people talk about aha moments, and I'm like, that's just the stupidest thing. Like, oh, I just had like an aha moment. I'm like, no, you didn't. You've been missing what's always been there the entire time. You're just now recognizing it. It's not aha. You've just been ignorant to what's always been. So, you could call it an aha moment. So they're ignorant to that. They're living and creating their own experience. So they hate their life. It's like, but it's a reflection of you. Same thing with me. I have to own that. It's a reflection of me when I'm having things that are going wrong or incorrect. It's actually me. So I gotta take that on, and I have to recognize that, get outside my mind and like trust my intuition, and then use my mind to do that. Even if it's counter to everything that's around me, I do that. And that's what these guys do. They reject the old ways and they create their own path, and that's a real power. That's a real, real power that we have. And when they tap into that, this is your life. Go live it.
I feel like it would be beneficial for anybody to go through an experience like that.
Yeah.
Not just vets, but just talking about society or the way people view hardship as it should be an avoidance. Whereas I think the community that we came from, obviously the phrase, if you're not cheating, you're not trying. And if you get caught, you just weren't trying hard enough. But the reality is
Deny.
Deny everything, make counter accusations. Admit nothing, deny everything, make counter accusations. Never heard that one before. But it's a community where it's fucking hard work though, man. It's a physically demanding job. And I think once you get used to that, you start seeking that as opposed to kind of turning away from it.
Yeah.
Do you ever have people that are resistant to the 41 days or where they're fighting it to the point where they're like, hey, you know what? I'm actually out of here. I'm assuming people could quit if they wanted to.
Quit. Oh yeah. Yeah. We don't make it. Listen, it wouldn't work if we were forcing you to be there.
It'd be more entertaining if you were.
It would be, yeah. But, unfortunately, that'd be called prison.
Yeah, you guys can leave anytime you want to. However, there's landmines, or maybe there's not.
Yeah, death or change. No, people do quit. Like I had a guy this year, like showed up on the first day, quit. Which pisses me off because it's like.
I used to see that with Bud students on day one, and my question that I wanted to ask them was, what did you think you were getting into? Like at day one, you got overwhelmed. Did you do any fucking research into this before you showed up?
So think about this. Like one thing I realized, especially with this horse I had last year, a Mustang I got, we adopt a lot, 10 or 15 at a time, get after them starting in January. And it's pretty, you think you're tough. You get in there with a horse that will kill you. He'll look at you. He'll sense from you if you're afraid of him, and if you are, and he comes towards you, mind you, they've never been touched by a human being in their life, and you step back a little bit, he's fucking on you.
What would be their preferred method of killing you? Would they just stomp you to death?
They strike you. They strike you with their front feet, or they double kick at you, or they bite. I've had them bite me in the back of my head.
I'm sure that feels
I've had
lovely.
them strike me, kick me. I've had all the above happen. Yeah, but I had this horse, and so he was a 7-year-old stud horse, wild, and I'm kind of let my ego get a little bit in front of me, and I was like, I got him. I can get him trained. So I go after this horse, and he struck me, and I had him saddled, and he bit me on my back. He would come at me. So every day I would go in there with him. I'm I would have to really take a deep breath and be okay, and I would get in there, and he'd start moving around, and he'd kind of take a little step in towards me, and he'd put his head out, and he was moving quick. And we did a video called Programmed. It's on YouTube. It's a kind of what I was talking about, how we get programmed in the military, and there's a shot of me hitting that horse, roping him, and he just goes ballistic in the video. It's not staged, don't do stage shit, unless I'm modeling underwear. And
obviously,
cellophane.
I mean, you were a team guy.
Why not?
Let's go ahead and get some more olive oil out here on set.
Yeah.
Let's get these shirts off, and let's go ahead and hem those UDT shorts up just a touch.
Steve, you missed a spot. Yeah, so yeah, but I roped this horse, and he just goes crazy, and it's just and it's kind of cool because what I'm talking about, it kind of goes with the scene. It's whoa, it's kind of a violent scene. Well, the point of that story is that he's a psychotic horse, right? He's not. I've had some really good guys come out and help me out. I'm over my head with this animal. I don't know what I'm doing wrong, and they're some horses are psychotic.
And you found one, it sounds like.
Yeah, and I was I thought a lot about that because my instinct was I want to help him. I want to help him, and he's not really helpable. And I think about people, right? There's some people that are not, they're never going to help themselves. They're just not. They're not going to do it. So that's why I'm you know what? I try to pick people on particular personality traits. I do my best to screen them. I don't always get it right. And then I get what I get, and they show up, and I'm always surprised when I see a guy on paper, looks like he's gonna be really good, and he's not really trainable. It's kind of you got to sit down, right? You're valuing somebody, you're is this person trainable?
Yeah.
Right. And the thing is, they got to want to do it. They have to want to do it. And so you can't make people want to do good or change their lives. They have to show up, have a spark. You got to build that spark. You got to promote that change, and that spark becomes a fire. And once they have the fire, they got to carry the torch. I can't carry the torch for them. They got to do it themselves. So, I mean, it's not like every person that joined the vets. It's not like every person that served in the military is a great person that wants to achieve their highest self. There's a lot of shitheads in there.
The honor graduate of my bud class is still in prison for being he wasn't a serial killer. He didn't meet that criteria, but he and his wife like to chop people up.
Oh. It doesn't surprise me
at all.
It doesn't surprise me. Yeah.
Yes.
So it's you got to think about what we're dealing with is being a vet or being in the service is an identity. We have to get beyond the identity and think about who the person is. And is that person, not the identity, trainable? So I have to bifurcate between this is their identity. Who is this person? I don't really look at the identity because everybody has these identity, I call them mind viruses. they get these mind viruses that they become obsessed with identity, and that's okay because I can crush that. But then the person, who are they? Is that person trainable? You know, like in the sense like training to take over their own lives once again. And that's what it is.
How many potential slots could you fill in a year? Because you said you've done 18 of these, right? 18.
Well, no, I've ridden across 18 wildernesses. We've been doing it for 7 years. So,
Okay.
you know, we take 8 guys per class for 41 days.
How many per year can you do?
We run 3 to 4, depending.
Okay.
It all depends. We raise money. You know, like I said, there's 50,000 nonprofits in North America.
Yeah.
Right. Nonprofits are designed so that you can really do the greater good, right? So, but unfortunately, like most nonprofits are just self-licking lollipops, and you know they're more about looking like they're doing things and they're doing all this stuff, but they're misdirected, and they have huge amounts. Like, great, you bought a bunch of veterans iPads. You know what they need is some running shoes, like, and a bag of carrots. Shout out to Carrots. I'm sponsored by Carrots. That's why I keep saying that.
I support it. Carrots are fucking delightful. I like pickled carrots.
I love pickled carrots. They got
They're
those
amazing.
snaps.
Oh, hell yeah.
Yeah.
I've also enjoyed the asparagus,
Ooh,
which I think is the plural of asparagus.
asparagus. That sounds like a philosopher.
Yeah.
Ladies
It's
and
a-
gentlemen, asparagus.
What's the plural of moose?
Ooh.
These are things I ask myself late at night.
Ooh.
I think it's meese. Or is it moose eye? I've rolled back and forth with that one too.
Moose eye. Yeah, Vietnamese's? I don't know.
Yeah. Fucking pickled carrots are delightful.
Yeah,
And I hear they're good for you.
they are good for you.
I don't drink the juice though. I have some friends who are like, yeah, make sure you. I take that back. There's a drink they do, a pickleback, which is like whiskey and pickle juice.
Ooh, yeah.
It's like I don't know about that.
I'm just kind of a straight up on the rocks guy. If I'm going to do whiskey, I don't want to add any. Just be yourself.
I call that the soup of the day.
I don't eat fusion food.
Fusion food? What's that?
Yeah, well, there's these restaurants that are these fusion restaurants. You know, you go there, it's like, you know, Asian Mexican fusion.
Yeah.
It's like a taco shell with friggin' General Tso's chicken.
Yeah, can I get the Kung Pao burrito? Like, no, we're not gonna.
No, I hate fusion.
Yeah.
When people invite me to a fusion restaurant, I refuse.
Yeah.
I'm so out in the ranch world and disconnected. Like I went to New York City. We did an event down there, a fundraiser. And I'm sitting there, and like these like super tall dude walks in, you know, black dudes. They walk in, and I'm like, and there's this little short kind of fat guy with him. And I was like, I had my buddy Rick. He's like a Marine major. He's like, you know, pink shirt on, like buttoned up blazer on. You know, I'm wearing like a hammer shirt or something. I'm just looking like a shithead. And I'm like sitting there, I'm speaking at this thing. We're having drinks with all these Wall Street guys. And I look over, I'm like, yo, dude, that's Timberland, the rapper. And he's like, oh, I don't know who that is, Micah. And I'm like, whatever, dude, you're a dork. And I was like, yeah, I freaking love Timberland. So I walk over and I'm like, there's the bouncer over there. Or not the bouncer, but he's like the doorman. So I walk over, I was like, yo. I'm like, is that who I think it is? And he's like, oh, no. So not the doorman. This is afterwards. So I go over to, which turns out to be Lamar Odom. Okay. So he's a basketball player.
Yeah.
And so I walk over and I tap Lamar on the arm. I'm like, hey, is that who I think it is? And he just looks at me like, and there's this guy kind of standing over there and he's like, who you think that is? And I was like, Timberland, the rapper. And he's like, nah, man. And I was like, whatever. So like I go back and I sit down with Rick and he's like, well, was it this Timberland character? And
Character.
So like this riffraff. So I'm like, whatever. So then I go over to the bouncer and I'm like, hey, who's that guy over there? Because I know he's somebody because there's some fanfare going on. People are kind of moving around. There's an energy. And he's like, that's 2-time NBA champ Lamar Odom. I'm like, who? He's like, him right there. And I was like, oh, shit. So, like, I sat back down. I was like, damn, I went up to that dude. I looked him up on the internet. And I was like, oh, shit. I went over and I asked him, I was like, who's the other guy? He's like, I don't know. It's just his fat friend. I was like, okay. So
Perfect. That guy
was
probably never has that happen to him, and that's exactly what he needs.
Yeah, well, I mean, I wish that I had like thought that out, but I actually just ignorantly went over because I was like, thinking like Timberland and Magoo, dude. I was like all fired up. So shout out to Lamar Odom if you're listening.
I don't think he does, but I mean, who knows? Maybe somebody that knows
He might
him.
start. He comes up in one of them tweeters.
Just stay the fuck off of the tweetering.
Yeah.
How I want to be respectful of your time. How can people find you and support what you have going on?
Yeah, so heroesandhorses.org. We're a nonprofit. We raise money. We got a gala coming up on the 23rd, and so we're doing a concert the night before with Ryan Bingham. So
where are you doing it
at? It's in Bozeman at the Armory. The night before is a concert. Then the gala is the next night. He's doing a private concert there. So got to know Ryan a couple of years ago, and so he's doing that. So fundraising, come out and volunteer. So for every one Heroes and Horses staff member, there's 14 volunteers that get involved. So everything from cowboy work to ranch work to wrangling and shipping and sorting cattle, working with vets. But yeah, I mean, we are solely funded by by donations, and so eventually we're going to start this beef company that we're putting together, and that will kind of like help fund more guys to come out. And I think that get involved, like get behind it. Like if you're working with an organization or whatever, like just make sure that your time and your effort is going towards true and quantifiable change. And so you can follow us on Instagram at heroesandhorses.org. There's a bunch of stuff on there, put a lot of cool messaging, and so donate and help us out. It costs about $25,000 to put a guy through the 9-week program. So it's 41 days, and then they go to an internship for 4 to 6 weeks. And we facilitate that too. And then there's a year-long take-home course called Stay the Course. And so it contains reading, fitness, nutrition. We make all our own food. All our own food is freeze-dried by us. It's packaged by us. It's prepared by us. And so it's a comprehensive 360-degree program. So yeah, we need support. We're doing a capital campaign. We just bought a big ranch, and we're doing a build-out, so we're raising money on that. We're building a human development center. So it's going to like Sornick's gym in it. It's going to have a meditation room. It's going to have a light room. It's going to have a sauna, and then a 10-person cold plunge in it, and then indoor riding arena and stuff like that. So yeah, so we need.
That's a lot.
Yeah, I don't have any money, so please help us.
One request before I let you leave.
Yeah.
Sometime in the near future, I feel like you'll find a Mustang that will be an asshole, and I want you to name him Dick Broom and send me a picture of this horse. I request that you name one of your goddamn horses Dick Broom and start an Instagram page for him.
You know what? I love Dick Broom because I first learned about that in the team. They called them East Coast Dick Brooms.
Oh, yes.
And also, there's this thing that they always say in the teams, which I never really understood. It's like, it's okay, boys. Make sure you got your Leathermans. 2 of them, because 2 is 1 and 1 is none. But then I always think to myself, well, if 1 is none, then 2 also has to be none, because 1 is none. So maybe we should stop saying that.
Or when they'll say slow is smooth and smooth is fast. So fast is actually slow?
Right, like I never all those stuff. You got it, brother. 6 Leatherman.
Yeah. How many canteens you have? Fucking 14. All right, don't worry about it. I'm not getting rid of any of them.
14 is 1.
Yeah. What a shit show, dude. I can't thank you enough for coming up here out of the way and recording this. That was an awesome episode.
Thank you for having me. I'm really honored. I love what you're doing. I love our country. I love vets, and I appreciate people like you kind of giving an outlet to people like me. And so thank you very much.
Yeah, my pleasure, man. Thank you.
All right.
Thank you again to Babbel for supporting this episode of the podcast. Right now, when you purchase a 3-month Babbel subscription, you'll get an additional 3 months for free. That's 6 months for the price of 3. Just go to Babbel.com and use the promo code CLEARED.
On the west bank of the river. That's A firm, west bank. It gives me hell. Still give it to me in the grove. Okay, 1's in from the north. I've got the west bank of the river. 2's going to give it to you in the grove. Roger, give me that gun run. Right along that back, baby.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you. Thanks for taking the time to tune in, whether you're listening on an audio-only platform or you're watching on YouTube. I appreciate that you take the time every week to tune in. People ask me a lot, what can they do to help me spread the word? And the answer is actually embedded in the question. The biggest thing you guys can do to help me, if you enjoy the podcast and you think it would be helpful to others, is subscribe and share it with other people. And if you have the time, go on to Apple Podcasts and leave me a rating and a review. If you think the podcast sucks, tell me it sucks and leave a 0-star review or the lowest stars possible. If you have a question, comment, or suggestion, you can go to clearedhotpodcast.com. And there is a contact me button right there, which will land in my inbox. And the last thing, if people are interested in helping out, what you can do is fly the old flag. And by that, I don't mean an actual flag, because I don't have any of those. I'm talking about t-shirts or sweatshirts or hats, whatever it may be. Again, clearedhotpodcast.com, click on the shop tab, and hopefully something in there looks like it would be an item you would like to wear around town. And then you can tell people what it is when they ask you. But that is it. The biggest thing I can say is thank you. I truly appreciate it. And until next time, see you.